it's almost like having a flashback. The only thing is that I'm going to be on the other side of the infield. I'm sure when I come in to talk to him, people's going to be saying, what is this, an old-timer game or I'm sorry, I don't mean to say that, but I'm sure people will be asking, you know, what is this, an all-time reunion or something like that? But it would be fun, you know, to have someone that has been in this organization or in the game longer than you.
I tell you what, facing Stieb, you know, it was no fun because here's a guy that throws the ball about 94, 95 miles an hour and does not throw it straight. And I think the best expert ever to ask about hitting off Dave Stieb, he works in the studio. His name is Pat Tabler because he hit Tabler every time because he'd run the fastball up and in him, and Tabby's looking for that breaking ball away. I mean, you know, I remember the two no-hitters he should have had. One was against us, the Indians. I mean, it was a man against boys, and we had no chance.
Is Joe Carter exaggerating? Was it really that bad facing Dave Stieb?
Thanks a lot, Joe. You had to remind me. Yes, it was. It was a nightmare facing Dave Stieb, especially as a right-handed batter. Here was the game plan that I used to take against him. Now, he had a great fastball that went this way and a slider that went this way. Well, you're not going to hit either one of those unless you're looking for one. So I said, I'm going to try and take that slider away from him. So I get up on the plate and just look slider, slider, slider. Well, I think Buck was catching and Ernie Witt was catching. I think they figured that out. So he started running that fastball, and every time at the end of the series facing that guy, my back was always black and blue because he'd drill me with fastballs. And I'll tell you, I let him know it, too. When I came over to Toronto, I said, Steve, you used to hit me all the time. And he just started laughing.
And you showed him the welts, and I'm sure he felt really badly about that.
I'm sure. Yeah, he felt awful for me.
You know, I saw Dave Stieb pitching when I was down at spring training in Florida, and I saw him throw, and it was interesting to watch some of the minor leaguers watch him say, hey, man, you know what? That's Dave Stieb. He's still got some nasty stuff. Lost a little bit of velocity, but he's still got great movement.
Yeah, I've watched him a couple times this year in the highlights that he's pitched in, and it doesn't look like he's thrown as hard as he did 10 years ago, but he's got great movement. Again, a fastball this way and a slider this way. Doesn't throw as hard, but he still had that great movement.
He's 41 years old. Here's a guy who hasn't started in the majors now for 5 years. When we were talking at spring training, we were thinking, come on, maybe as a reliever when a game's completely out of hand, and that's the only action Stieb's seen so far, really. He threw those 3 perfect innings, but the game was completely out of reach. Can this guy become a full-time starter on the Blue Jays staff? And if he does become a full-time starter, does that not tell you the Jays are in huge trouble? I don't know if he can become a full-time starter now because he doesn't have the innings in to work up the 7 or 8 innings that he's got to be as a starter. This is a doubleheader. This is the kind where you give the guy, he's got to eat up some innings. This is the perfect guy for it. I'm going to sit back and have a lot of fun watching it because I haven't seen him pitch in 5 or 6 years. And you know what? Blue Jay fans right across the country are going to enjoy watching him. Dave Stieb back on the mound for the Toronto Blue Jays, his first Major League start in 5 years. That game gets underway in about 15 minutes or so, live right here on TSN. But stay with us. When we come back on Baseball Tonight, we'll recap what happened today in the National League.
Pitcher Dave Stieb has done what everyone thought would be impossible just a few months ago, and that's start for the Blue Jays. Just a week shy of his 41st birthday, Stieb will face the team he was with when his career ended for the first time back in 1993, the Chicago White Sox. Stieb will take the mound for the Jays tonight in Game 2 of a doubleheader. Game 1 is currently underway right now at Comiskey. Pat Henkin, who had Dave Stieb as a mentor in his early days as a Jay, is on the hill, and he promptly gets lit up by leadoff hitter Ray Durham. Goes deep to right. Durham's 10th of the year will put the White Sox on the board. It's 1-0. Still in the first, Albert Bell hits a slow roller to short for the double play, but Tony Fernandez can't turn it, and that'll end the inning. Pat Henkin pays. Next batter up, Robin Ventura, goes deep again to right, a 2-run shot. Ventura's 11th of the year. Shy Sox up 3-0, and the hitting continues. 4th inning, 6-1 Sox. Albert Bell says, see you later, a 2-run shot. Bell's 8th home run in his last 7 games and his 26th of the year. No showers yet for the Jays. They still have another game. In fact, right now, they are batting in the 6th. The score right now in Game 1 of this doubleheader is 8-1. And coming in, the Jays have lost 5 out of their last 6 games. Tonight on TSN, Dave Stieb will make his 410th career start. It's hard to believe that he began his Major League pitching career back in 1979 when the Jays franchise was just 2 years old. Well, 19 years later, Dave Stieb is out to prove he's still got it. Right now, we'll take you to Dan Schulman and Buck Martinez.
In Game 2 here at Comiskey Park on the south side of Chicago, the Blue Jays are going to take on the White Sox, but really the story within the story is Dave Stieb getting his first start as a major leaguer in 5 years, a day that most people, frankly, never thought would happen.
No, you know what, and it's kind of surprising, all of the hoopla that's been surrounding this start. Dave Stieb himself is very excited about it. When you think about his record as a Blue Jay pitcher in Chicago, he's 10-1, and I have some personal thoughts about that because I was the catcher the day he lost that one game. He gave up a 3-run home run to Greg Lozinski and lost 4-3, and Dave and I had a couple of words during that ball game. But overall, Dave is really pumped up about this start. He says he's going to throw a few more fastballs today, so that'll be something to watch for early in the game.
Now, all through his career, you tried to get him to throw more fastballs, and he kept going back to the slider and the curveball. Should we believe him here tonight?
Well, I think he's really going to go out there because so far, pitching in relief, he's thrown an awful lot of breaking balls, and he's aware that the White Sox have probably scouted him a little bit, so he's going to throw a few more fastballs early.
So it's a big night for Dave Stieb. It's also a big night for the catcher. Mark D'Alessandro has been chosen by Tim Johnson to catch, and he's got a little something special going tonight as well.
It's kind of twofold. I mean, I live in Chicago, and being going up 3 miles from Comiskey Park, and being able to catch in front of my family and friends, and being able to catch a guy like Dave Stieb, it's definitely going to be a special moment, and probably one I'll always remember.
Guys like Mark D'Alessandro look forward to these types of games because he's getting to catch a legend in Toronto history, because Dave Stieb was probably the most dominant pitcher in the history of the Blue Jays, and he gets a start in his hometown, so he's going to have a great day here in Game 2 of this doubleheader.
It's the first time D'Alessandro has ever started as a major leaguer in his hometown of Chicago, so he'll have some fun again tonight as the Blue Jays take on the White Sox in Game 2 of the doubleheader. Dave Stieb on the mound for the Blue Jays. Carlos Castillo comes out of the bullpen to start for the White Sox.
Thanks, gentlemen. We hope you folks at home can join us for this big game. Don't forget, 7:30 is the game time. You'll be able to see it live right here on TSN.
Many have doubted Dave Stieb's comeback attempt. But Dave Stieb was not one of those people. The Blue Jays' all-time leader in wins, strikeouts, and numerous other distinctions, who has 5 one-hitters and 1 memorable no-hitter, will be back in a familiar position tonight as a starting pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. After working his way through the minor leagues and through the Blue Jays bullpen, Dave Stieb will make his first major league start in over 5 years, next on TSN.
Labatt Blue Jays baseball on TSN. Tonight, the Blue Jays and the White Sox live from Comiskey Park.
And we are live and interactive as Dave Stieb warms up in the bullpen to start tonight's game. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Baseball Tonight, along with Pat Tabler. I'm Gino Retta. Great to have you with us. And, Pat, when you sit there and watch Dave Stieb in the bullpen, he's not coming in as a reliever. He's not coming in mop-up duty. This is a twilight doubleheader. The Jays lost the first one. They're trying to pull out of a tailspin. At 41 years old, Dave Stieb is starting. What thoughts go through your mind when you see that?
I wonder if I could still play. No, I'm just kidding. Dave Stieb, he needs a big game here. The Blue Jays are scuffling a little bit here, and they need someone to infuse some excitement and pitch a good game. The last 2 games, Woody Williams has had a tough time getting out of the box. Pat Henkin had a tough first 4 innings. They need somebody to come in and give that bullpen a little rest and get it to where the Blue Jays can get ahead and they can, instead of playing catch-up.
And one of the guys that Dave Stieb is going to be battling tonight is Albert Bell. Albert Bell, a home run in Game 1 today. He has 8 homers in 7 games since the All-Star break. For their thoughts on tonight's game, let's go to Comiskey. Buck Martinez and Dan Schulman.
Guys, thanks. And with the way the Blue Jays were really humiliated here in Game 1, the good news for them is they get to go right back out and try and erase that memory with a solid Game 2. They may not be thinking about Dave Stieb specifically, but all Blue Jay fans are tonight.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm looking forward to seeing Dave Stieb get his first start here. Dave Stieb has an awful lot of emotion going through him right now. He was great as a Blue Jay pitcher against the Chicago White Sox in his heyday. He was 10-1. And he gets his first start of the season tonight. When he started out in Syracuse, he was a starter, so he logged an awful lot of innings. He made 9 starts. His record was only 5-4, but look at his ERA, very good at 2.73. In fact, he had 2 complete games. Then he gets called up to Toronto, and obviously there were no spots in the starting rotation, so he pitched out of the bullpen. He made 4 appearances. Again, he had a very good ERA, although he's only pitched 10 2/3. One question Dave has about himself tonight is whether or not his stamina will be there, because he was a little concerned about whether or not his legs would get him through the early part of the game.
Sometimes surprise starters or guys who get added into the rotation find out about a start at the last minute. They don't have a chance to get nervous. They go out there and pitch well. He's watched all of game 1 here. He's had 3 hours to think about his start. Is that difficult?
Well, it might be for a guy that hasn't had so many starts as Dave Stieb. And even though he's been away from the game for 5 years, I think that experience is going to help him a lot. He's got a pretty good idea what he wants to do tonight against the White Sox. He's added a curveball to the mix, but when he pitched in relief, he used an awful lot of sliders and curveballs. He thinks tonight he's going to throw a few more fastballs early in this game.
Facing some tough hitters in Albert Bell and Frank Thomas, Mark D'Alessandro, a Chicago native, will be the catcher for Dave Stieb here at Comiskey Park. Stieb turns 41 a week from today. He's on the mound against Carlos Castillo of the Chicago White Sox here at Comiskey.
Labatt Blue Jays Baseball on TSN. Brought to you by Labatt Blue. Labatt Blue Jays Baseball on TSN. Brought to you in part by Lipton Brisk Iced Tea. That's brisk, baby.
Carlos Castillo comes out of the bullpen to make just his 2nd start of the season against the Blue Jay lineup, which is brought to you by Midas Car Care, the way it should be. This is game 2 of the doubleheader. Some changes. Shannon Stewart back in. Darren Fletcher will DH. Mike Stanley has struggled terribly since the break. Mark D'Alessandro will catch, and Craig Graybeck, who played very well at short in game 1, will play second in game 2.
Right-hander Carlos Castillo makes his 2nd start of the season for the White Sox here in game 2. Castillo has a very resilient arm, and he's pitched very effectively for them out of the bullpen. 62 innings, 58 hits. He's got pretty good control. He'll throw a lot of strikes, and that's what Jerry Manuel was referring to when he tried to decide who to pitch here, and Castillo got the nod.
Just about 25 minutes between games. If you missed it earlier, 9-3, the White Sox winning. Let's show you some of the changes they've made for game 2.
Well, Albert Bell is in left field, but Jeff Abbott gets a start in center. Mike Cameron booted a ball right in the 9th inning, and maybe that was the play that prompted Jerry Manuel to make the switch. Maglio Ordonez plays in right field. Robin Ventura and youngster Mike Caruso on the left side. Ray Durham, the all-star, and Greg Norton gets a start at first base. Takes over for Will Cordero, who played in game 1.
And here is Shannon Stewart, who did not start in game 1. Came on defensively in the late stages when the Blue Jays were getting blown out. He remains one of the few Blue Jays who's actually swinging the bat well since the break, but he continues to play on a sporadic basis, and with Tony Phillips on his way, Stewart may struggle even more for playing time. One very possible date of Phillips' arrival is Friday in Toronto when the Blue Jays begin a 3-game series with the New York Yankees. 1 ball and 1 strike. The umpires also have rotated a base from game 1, so Chuck Merriweather, who was at first in game 1, behind the plate here in game 2. Jim Evans at first is the crew chief. 2-1 on Stewart.
Well, we'll get a good idea about the character of this Blue Jay ball club as they face Carlos Castillo after getting thumped in game 1. And somebody's got to step up and stop this, whether it's a hitter or a pitcher or someone.
We'll take you through game 1, periodically through game 2, but trust us when we tell you that Tim Johnson has to be as angry as he has been all season. It's not just that they lost, it's all the incredible mental mistakes that they made in game 1. Stewart hits it softly into center field, a base hit. The final score was 9-3, but the Blue Jays both hurt themselves at the plate with mental mistakes and gave runs away. Tony Fernandez had a miserable game. The White Sox got to Pat Henneken early with Durham and Ventura homering in the first. Albert Bell's now got 8 homers in his last 7 games. Pat Henneken was roughed up and had to soak up some innings because of the doubleheader. Tim Johnson wanted to keep his relievers fresh for game 2. He used only Bill Risley and used him for just 1 inning. Sean Green, the batter, suffered through an 0 for 5 in game 1, but he'll stay to play in game 2.
They hit 5 ground balls. Just couldn't get anything going at the plate. And it's not like they were facing Bob Gibson. They were up against Jamie Navarro, and Navarro's had an awful season.
He came in with an ERA over 6. Gets booed every start at home, but turned in maybe his best performance of the season. One of the best chances the Blue Jays had was with the bases loaded and nobody out in the 4th. Navarro had loaded the bases on walks with nobody out, and then Tony Fernandez on the first pitch swung at a ball out of the strike zone and hit into a double play. Fernandez also botched a double play ball that extended the inning, and Robin Ventura then homered to score 2. Eddie Rodriguez mysteriously tried to score Craig Raybeck from first on a double with nobody out, and the Blue Jays trailing 8-1. He was thrown out, and that ended up costing the Blue Jays a couple of runs as the inning unfolded. Not that they could have won, but it shouldn't have been as embarrassing as it was.
No, not at all. And the first inning should have been a lot different. Fernandez makes a double play. Henkin gets out of the inning, just allowing the leadoff home run to Ray Durham. But the hitters haven't been very productive. They haven't been able to get key hits, and they just haven't been able to get anything going offensively.
As a team, the Blue Jays are hitting under 200 since the All-Star game. That's through 7 games. And against Stewart, he's made a lot of mistakes on the bases, and he doesn't have an arm. But he's doing something some of the other guys aren't. That's getting on base.
Yeah, he's doing exactly what he should be doing in the leadoff spot. And Green, up until the break, was doing pretty good hitting second behind him. Castillo is pretty quick over there to first base, holding Shannon Stewart close.
'36th appearance, just the 2nd start. Jerry Manuel had to decide between Castillo and a left-hander, Scott Air, who had been making a bunch of starts earlier in the season. 1 ball and 2 strikes on a Green. The White Sox are last in the major leagues in ERA. Long gone to the days of Jack McDowell, Alex Fernandez, Wilson Alvarez. Jerry Manuel has really struggled to try to put any kind of veteran pitchers out there. They traded away so many good pitchers last year. They've got one of the youngest pitching staffs in baseball this year. There goes Stewart. It's a pitch out, and Chad Kreuter dropped the ball.
'30th stolen base for Shannon Stewart. Kreuter guessed right with the Blue Jays. He called for the pitch out, but then when he gets out there, he drops the ball. Not a great jump by Stewart, and there's the pitch out, and you see Kreuter gets ready to throw to second, and he drops the ball.
Stewart at second. The 2-2 to Green is lifted high in the air to right field. Settling underneath at Ordonez. Stewart at the bag to tag. On his way to third and beats the throw.
Sean Green advanced the base runner over to third after the stolen base. He just got under it a bit, but hit it deep enough into right to move Shannon Stewart over to third. And now Canseco has an opportunity to give the Blue Jays a lead.
Probably settle Dave Stieb a little bit if he went out there even with just a 1-0 lead. Castillo looks like he will work from the windup with Stewart at third, 1 down. And the White Sox play the infield back. Just underway here in game 2 of the doubleheader. Down the left field line, a fair ball, and the Blue Jays will take a 1-0 lead. Stewart scores on what will be a double for Jose Canseco.
And that's a good start for the Blue Jays after that first game loss, and Canseco jumps on the first pitch fastball from Castillo and hits it over Ventura's head. Down the left field line, Albert Bell gives chase. Shannon Stewart comes in and scores, and Canseco picks up the double.
And now the batter will be Delgado. In game 1, Delgado went 0 for 2 and also walked twice. He is in the midst of an 0 for 23 drought. And his slump coincided with the All-Star break. In his first at-bat in Detroit, he singled off the wall, driving in a run. That's Thursday night, first game in Detroit. He hasn't had a hit since. Little pop-up into shallow right. In comes Ordonez, 2 down. Canseco picking up his 52nd RBI of the season on the double that scores Stewart. And now one of the new wrinkles in the Game 2 lineup for Tim Johnson. Darren Fletcher is going to stay in the lineup in DH with 3 catchers on the roster right now. Tim Johnson with a little more flexibility, and a struggling Mike Stanley sits down. Fletcher's in.
Darren had a double in 2 trips and a walk in Game 1.
Into center field. Jeff Abbott getting the start in Game 2, makes the catch, and the inning is over. But the Blue Jays do cash in 1 as Canseco doubles in Stewart. Dave Stieb is going to take the mound with the benefit of a 1-0 lead. He makes his first start at the major league level in more than 5 years when we come back. Last major league win came as a member of the Chicago White Sox in this ballpark. It was his only win with Chicago. He went 1-3 before being released in 1993. Tried to come back with Kansas City, pitched a little bit for them at AAA, didn't have any success and was released, and now here he is back in the same ballpark again. These are his numbers as a Blue Jay.
He's the franchise leader in wins, innings pitched, strikeouts, starts, complete games, and shutouts. And obviously he is not the same type of pitcher that he was when he put up all those great numbers, but Dave Stieb still has a sharp-breaking slider, good curveball, and he is looking forward to facing this lineup here tonight.
A lineup which is getting hot. The White Sox lineup is brought to you by Midas Car Care, the way it should be. Albert Bell is without question the hottest hitter in baseball. He homered in Game 1. He's got 8 homers in his last 7 games. Durham homered and Ventura homered as well. Some new faces down at the bottom. Norton, Abbott, and Kruder did not start the first game.
You can see Dave Stieb doesn't have a record so far, but a very good ERA. In just 10 2/3 innings, his opponent's batting average a very respectable .211. 8 hits, no home run, just a single walk and 5 strikeouts. His slider has been good. He's got a new curveball, and he will throw to Mark D'Alessandro, the catcher that handled him a lot down in AAA, handled him some in the spring, so they have a little bit of a comfort level.
And Stieb is a little bit familiar with some of these White Sox hitters. Some of them were around when he last pitched. He was a teammate of Frank Thomas for a little while here in Chicago. Ray Durham's a new face, though, and Ray Durham is a pretty dangerous hitter, especially as a leadoff guy. Leadoff home run in Game 1 for his 10th of the season as Stieb bends one right to the outside corner for strike 1.
See, that's the different pitch that Stieb throws now as opposed to what he threw 5 years ago. There's the slider, and that was his trademark. And that's what everybody knew him by, was that hard, late-breaking slider. Yeah. That'll tell you a lot, huh?
The 0-2. And grounded by the mound into center field. Durham gets it done.
Well, they tried to loop another breaking ball by Ray Durham, and Durham was able to hit it back up the middle. Stieb swipes at it with his glove. He can't make a play on. Graybeck, the second baseman, comes over toward the bag at second, but he can't knock it down. And Durham leads off Game 2 almost like he did in Game 1. This time he is at first base.
And right away, Stieb has to work from the stretch with a speedy runner at first and a pretty good hitter at the plate. Rookie Mike Caruso up from A ball to the major leagues. Defense has been a problem, but he's hitting .314. And if the name sounds vaguely familiar, Caruso was one of the key players the White Sox picked up from San Francisco on that heavily criticized deal when they sent Hernandez, Alvarez, and Darwin the other way.
Now Caruso came over here along with Lorenzo Barcelo, Keith Folk, Bobby Howry. Folk and Howry are here with the White Sox. You see Durham's numbers, very good percentage. 21 of 26 for Ray Durham. Many people believe that Caruso was the key guy in that trade because they felt like he could make the jump from A ball up to the big leagues quickly.
There goes the runner. And it's hit foul off the bat of Caruso. 0-2. Dave Stieb so far has thrown 5 pitches and all have been strikes, and that's been something that I think has surprised a lot of people, that he's been able to get that control, that command back, both at Syracuse and in his 4 relief appearances with the Blue Jays.
Well, he is talking to himself already, and that's something he always did in his prime. Had an ongoing conversation throughout the course of a ball game about finishing pitches, about what to do on the next pitch. Tremendous competitor.
You having a bit of a flashback watching him?
Oh, yeah.
0-2. There goes Durham. No pitch out. And a little pop-up into shallow left. Shannon Stewart comes in to make the catch. Durham has to hustle back. Doesn't draw a throw.
Well, it's always good to get that first out under your belt. As Dan mentioned, Stieb has yet to throw a ball. Behind Stieb in the outfield, it was Canseco in left field in game 1. He moves to right. Shannon Stewart takes over in left. Sean Green is still in center. Gonzalez didn't start at shortstop. Graybeck started in game 1 at short. He moves to second. Delgado and Sprague are there, and Mark D'Alessandro gets a start in his hometown.
And here comes a huge test for Dave Stieb, to say the least. Frank Thomas, Albert Bell, and Robin Ventura, the next 3 hitters for the White Sox. One of the things that Tim Johnson liked about Stieb against Chicago is how many right-handed hitters they have. And especially their 2 big hitters are both right-handed hitters. Those are the 2 he was keying on. Stieb with a lot of breaking balls. Tim Johnson figuring he would have an advantage against the righties.
Well, the one thing that Dave doesn't have is that great running fastball that was so good for him. He had tremendous movement on his fastball, and he'd throw it in the low 90s. He's always been very quick to first base.
Oh, 1-1 the count. Durham at first, 1 down. There he goes. Throw down by D'Alessandro. They got it.
Well, what a great feeling for Mark D'Alessandro. He guns down a very good base runner in Ray Durham. And he worked hard in Baltimore throwing with Sal Butera early in the afternoon the other day. And right here, his hard work pays off. Quick tag by Graybeck, and he's out. Just the 6th time Durham has been caught this year.
1-1 now. The count on Thomas. Upstairs, ball 2. D'Alessandro making an early mark here in his first ever major league start in his hometown.
Right on the money. That old swipe tag, the ball beat him, and he was out.
Inside to Thomas, 3-1.
Come on, he said, throw that ball right.
You must have just sometimes just shaken your head and said, what am I going to do with this guy?
That's
ball 4.
Pitch. He threw a slider 3-1 and didn't get the call.
So Thomas goes down to first on a close pitch. And now the hottest hitter in baseball. Miserable April, but look at the numbers now. In the top 5 in the league now in homers and RBIs. The American League Player of the Week last week. 8 homers in his last 7 games. And a guy also who faced Stieb a little bit some 5-6 years ago.
Look what he's done in July. He's 20 for 46 with 9 homers in 20 ribbies. And it's the 15th of July. Got half a month to go.
Putting up a Sammy Sosa-like month here. Ripped left center. Way back. And another one for Albert Bell. His 2nd of the doubleheader, his 9th in 8 games. And the White Sox take a 2-1 lead.
When Albert Bell's hot, it doesn't make any difference who's pitching to him or where the pitch is. That was a breaking ball that stayed on the inner part of the plate, and he took care of it. Over the wall into the bullpen, and a tough start for Dave Stieb. Albert Bell is red hot.
Robin Ventura, the batter. The White Sox have now homered in 10 consecutive games, and in that time they've hit 20 home runs. They're playing as well right now as they have all season. The same kind of thing you could say about the Orioles when the Blue Jays saw them. Ventura with a home run in the first game. Came into game one in a lengthy slump, 9 for 68. But he got healthy in game one. 2 balls and a strike.
You know, Dave told me yesterday in Baltimore that he was going to use more fastballs. The only batter he's thrown fastballs to is the number 2 hitter, Caruso. He continues to throw that overhand curveball.
What does that tell you about his state of mind?
Well, he's just not confident with that fastball. That's the slider that missed inside. And it's got to be difficult for him because when he pitched in the big leagues last, he had a real good fastball. And when you see the velocity down, you have a tendency to avoid throwing fastballs.
3-2. This one is popped up into left. Stewart's got to play, and that'll be the inning. But the White Sox do some damage. Stieb, upset with himself, surrenders a home run to Albert Bell. A 2-run shot, and through an inning, it's the White Sox 2 and the Blue Jays 1. The Blue Jays take the lead, then Albert Bell homers off Dave Stieb to give the White Sox the lead. Carlos Castillo is the starter for the Chicago White Sox tonight. And tonight's scouting report on Castillo is brought to you by the Ford Motor Company of Canada Limited.
Well, Castillo has got a fastball, slider, change, and a curveball. He's got a very smooth delivery, and because of that smooth delivery, the ball can get on you, so he can be sneaky quick at times. Not an overpowering pitcher, but he will lull you to sleep and then pop that fastball in on your hands.
Ed Sprague leads off the second for the Blue Jays and grounds it foul down the third base side. One thing obviously that we can expect, maybe on both sides, but definitely from Carlos Castillo, is he's not going to be able to go 8 or 9 innings. The longest he's gone in any game this year was in relief, and it was 5 innings. His only other start was against Oakland. He went 3 2/3 and was hit very hard. Gave up 5 runs, including homers to Matt Stairs and Ben Grieve. Sprague's got a base hit to left, and for the second inning in a row, the Blue Jays have the leadoff man on.
Eddie Sprague has moved right up on top of the plate, and he's got great coverage away. In the first game, he was called out on an inside fastball that he felt was off the plate, but right here, when Castillo throws the breaking ball, it's off the plate outside, and he's able to get to it and hook it into left.
Here's Mark D'Alessandro getting the start behind the plate tonight. Has already thrown out a Ray Durham. He estimated he had more than 100 passes for tonight's game. Grew up 5 kilometers away from Comiskey Park and said it became so overwhelming he finally had to just say to his dad, "You deal with it. You make sure everybody gets there," because it was a little bit much for him. Played here a couple of times with the Angels, but never started a game. Doesn't have a whole lot of major league experience.
Everybody loves to get a start in your hometown, and it's the first time for D'Alessandro. You come back and you get a chance to start. Tim Johnson was aware of the situation. We talked about it in Baltimore the other night, how Johnson wanted to get everybody into the game in Florida when the Blue Jays went down and played the Marlins, because there were so many people that lived in South Florida.
1-1 the count. Grounded by the mound. It's short. Caruso, the flip to Durham, and the throw pulls Norton off the bag. So D'Alessandro aboard on a fielder's choice. Would have been an acrobatic double play.
Eddie Sprague, as he always does, was really bearing down on Ray Durham at second base, and he distracted him a bit. D'Alessandro hustling down the line. Look at the play by Caruso. Behind the bag, he flips it to Durham, and Durham has his back to Sprague, but he knows he's right on him. And he pulls Greg Norton off the bag at first. A very young middle of this interior defense. Caruso just turned 21. He teams up with the all-star Ray Durham.
They can be spectacular at times. They're both very talented, but they also make a lot of mistakes. Runner at first, 1 down, and here's Graybeck getting another start. Gonzalez sat out of game 1, so Graybeck played short. Now Fernandez sits out of game 2. Graybeck's at second. And Graybeck responded with a single and a double in game 1. Line down to third. He hit it hard, but right at Ventura. Let's get an update with Gino at Baseball Tonight.
Well, down to Florida, 4-3 Marlins Expos with runners on first and second. Ryan McGuire lifts the fly ball to left center field. Chris Widger, who was on first, thinking base hit, so he runs past Mark Rudzelenik, who was on second base. Rudzelenik figures, oh, it is a base hit, ends up scoring, ties the game, and gets Jim Leland tossed for arguing his case.
A little emotion even in a game between the Expos and the Marlins. Expos on TSN tomorrow night against the Pittsburgh Pirates.
The Marlins are playing pretty well right now.
2 down, runner at first for Gonzalez. Through the right side for a base hit. And around to third on the play goes D'Alessandro.
Now D'Alessandro hustles all the way from first to third on the base hit, and Alex Gonzalez goes after another first pitch.
5 at-bats in a row.
Right here, he gets jammed a little bit, but he fights it off and gets it through the right side of the infield. Durham dives for it, but he can't knock it down.
Blue Jays try to rally to tie or maybe take the lead here in the second. Shannon Stewart is up for the second time. Good start to the game for him with a single, a stolen base, and then he scored a run. Back up to 275. Very close. Gonzalez bit on the first move.
I don't know if he sold this to third or not. Let's take a look at this move. Watch Castillo. He didn't have any arm action at all. I think they could have called that a balk. You have to make a move to fake to third, and there was no arm action whatsoever. I think they could have called him for a balk right there. You can fake to third and go to first. We've seen Pat Henkin do it a lot. But in my mind, Castillo balked right there because he didn't sell it with his arm. He stepped toward third, but he made no throwing motion.
1 strike, the count on Stewart. This one is popped up right side. Durham back into right field, drifting across the line to make the catch and end the inning as the Blue Jays get a couple of base hits but cannot score. Stieb back to the mound with the White Sox leading 2-1. Stieb on the mound for the Blue Jays. The White Sox lead 2-1. Albert Abel homering off Stieb in the first inning with 2 out. Dave Stieb, we told you, hasn't started a game in the majors since May of '93. Hasn't started a game in the majors as a Blue Jay since August of '92. Elbow injury, went on the DL, and never made it back to Toronto.
Now, his elbow is bothering him for the last year or so, and after he left the Blue Jays, he came to the Chicago White Sox, and he pitched in 4 games for Chicago and had elbow tendonitis throughout all 4 of those games.
Tonight's scouting report on Stieb is brought to you by the Ford Motor Company of Canada Limited.
Fastball, slider, change, and curve, and a lot more breaking balls because the fastball's not the same as it used to be. He obviously doesn't have the same velocity he had when he was in his prime, and he has developed more of an overhand curveball to complement the slider.
What does he throw more now, the slider or the curveball?
I think he's thrown a few more curves so far in this game.
Right fielder Maglio Ordonez, the first batter for Stieb here in the second inning. Now, does he have 2 fastballs as well? Is there a little cutter sometimes that he throws?
No, he doesn't need a cutter because he's got that slider that will break away from a right-handed hitter.
Grounded by the mound, charged by Gonzalez, has to hurry to get him, and he does.
Well, that was a good sequence there. He threw 3 fastballs in a row, and he got Ordonez to ground to Gonzalez at shortstop. So maybe he's already made an adjustment. This is the 3rd fastball in a row to Ordonez. It's high, but it had enough movement to get Ordonez to hit it on the ground.
Well, there have been a lot of great pitchers who have attempted comebacks, great hitters who have attempted comebacks as well. But you think of Jim Palmer and Steve Carlton and some Hall of Famers who have tried to resurrect their careers. And it's tough to go back, especially when you miss as much time as Stieb has. But He says, don't say I'm 40, I'm 35. My arm's been resting for 5 years. And this is not an experiment. This is not a one-year thing. He fully intends to pitch next year and to keep pitching as long as he can.
Well, Palmer had a pretty good explanation why he believes that Stieb should be successful, is because he's got that sinking fastball and a lot of sliders, and he works down in the strike zone.
Line right to Graybeck off the bat of Greg Norton. 2 down.
That was another fastball to the outside part of the plate. That's a hang with him. He hit it well, but right at Graybeck. To give you a good idea of the frustration a hitter experiences when he sees that defender standing right there in his tracks. But to finish up on Palmer, he said he couldn't make it. Palmer couldn't because he was a high fastball pitcher. And when you lose velocity as a high fastball pitcher, you become batting practice. But Stieb has another advantage in Palmer's mind in that the strike zone has gotten lower. So he can get more strikes down around the knees, and he doesn't have to pitch up.
0-1 the count to the center fielder, Jeff Abbott. Now 0-2. Abbott didn't start in game 1. He is a fine hitting outfielder, but the White Sox have a lot of concerns about his defense, and that's kept him out of the lineup on a regular basis. But he comes in hitting better than 300. It's a pretty crowded situation. You know, Albert Bell's going to be in left. They've got young players in center and right, Mike Cameron and Maglio Ordonez, although Cameron's only hitting about 215. Abbott doesn't get a lot of playing time. They seem higher on Cameron right now than on Abbott. Stieb looking for a 1-2-3 inning after surrendering a 2-run homer to Albert Bell in the first. The 2-2.
Hey, Abbott had a pretty good cut at that slider, even though it was in a pretty good location. Nardi Contreras, the new pitching coach in Chicago. He was hired in May after Mike Pasick was fired, talking to Carlos Castillo.
Fastball, and Abbott sends it right back up the middle for a 2-out base hit.
Pretty good at bat for Jeff Abbott. He fouled off a couple of sliders down and away, and then Stieb tries to come inside, and you see that Abbott kept his hands inside the ball and takes it right back up the middle.
He's aboard with 2 down in the Chicago second, and here's the catcher, Chad Kruder. Former Blue Jay Charlie O'Brien got the start in game 1 and had a 2-run double. A couple of veteran catchers just kind of keeping the spot warm until the White Sox can develop somebody, but both of them are having decent seasons, Kruder and O'Brien.
I think the White Sox felt with 2 veteran catchers they would be able to bring along the younger pitchers on this staff a little quicker, especially Charlie O'Brien and his reputation for being so good at handling pitchers.
What kind of a time do you think Mark D'Alessandro has? A guy like Charlie O'Brien, who's caught so many pitchers and has been around so long, won't hesitate to go out to the mound and say, listen, this is the way it's got to be done. But how does D'Alessandro go out and try to convince a guy like Dave Stieb of something?
I think he has the confidence to do that because he got to know Stieb a little bit down at Syracuse, and he could see him throughout the course of his minor league comeback. And he knows that his job is to get the best out of Stieb. Anything he does with the bat at this point is a bonus.
Runner goes. And Abbott is out. Mark D'Alessandro has thrown out 2 runners in the first 2 innings of this game. That'll help Dave Stieb. 2-1 Chicago through 2. 2-1 White Sox through 2 against Dave Stieb and the Blue Jays. After the game, a cash donation will be made to the Canadian Special Olympics on behalf of the Blue Jays Player of the Game and Nikon. And Nikon presents the Nuvus 160i Advanced Photo System camera. But all you really need to know, it's a Nikon. Well, you said for Mark D'Alessandro, his job tonight is to handle Dave Stieb, but I'm sure Stieb appreciates the other help that D'Alessandro's been giving him.
Well, he has thrown out 2 runners in Mark D'Alessandro worked with Sal Butera in Baltimore on his throwing, and watch how quickly he gets into a throwing position. He doesn't have an overpowering arm, but he throws it right on the money in time for Gonzalez to put the tag on Abbott. And now Stieb and D'Alessandro are having a chat on the bench about what they should do next time through the White Sox order.
Shawn Green sends the first pitch into right center. It'll drop and get by the outfielder, and Green's on his way to second. Shawn Green at second as two Chicago outfielders, Abbott and Ordonez, kick it around.
Well, you know what? I bet you Shawn Green gets credited for a double here, because he had a long run, and although he knocked it down, he didn't really have control of the ball. It's a high fastball that Green hammers into the alley. Now watch Abbott. He reaches for it and never really gets a glove on it, but then this right here I don't think can be an error in my estimation. I think Green was headed to second all the way.
He's at second. Canseco the batter. Third inning in a row the Blue Jays have had the leadoff man on. This one's down the right field line. Could be trouble. It'll drop foul. The scoring on the play is a single and an error on the center fielder for overrunning the ball initially.
So I was wrong.
Well, no, you were only half wrong. You said it couldn't be an error on the right fielder.
But Abbott, I don't think ever really had control of it. He had a long run, and I guess you could say that he would have gloved it cleanly. Then Ordonez came over to help him out, and he kicked it around a little bit, but that was after the fact. Green was going to go to second and no further.
And again, that's the concern the White Sox have about Jeff Abbott is his defense. Cameron can really go get it in the outfield. Canseco breaking another bat. A couple of weeks ago, he told us he was up around 70 on the season, and he just can't seem to get one to last more than 2 or 3 days.
Well, we have talked about the bats in general around baseball, and they're so light that they don't stand up unless you hit it right on the sweet spot. You got a good chance of breaking a bat.
Canseco ripped a double into the left field corner to score Shannon Stewart in the first. Close, but no. Pretty good from Castillo, and he wants to know where it was, asking Chuck Merriweather.
I think Chad Kruder took a strike away from the pitcher with all his body movement.
The 1-1. That's a good one on the inside part of the plate. 1-2.
As a catcher, when you move around a lot and you have a tough time catching the ball, you really change the umpire's perspective. And Kruder really moved on that previous pitch, and although it looked like it was over the plate, I don't think Kruder gave Chuck Merriweather a very good shot at calling it.
So often you'll see a catcher clearly set up outside, but if he doesn't have to move at all to catch the ball, it'll get called a strike. That one hits his leg or his foot and bounces away, and Green down to third. It's been a rough half inning for the White Sox.
Well, they have kicked it around a little bit here, and Kruder couldn't corral the curveball. And now he's talking to Castillo as if maybe he got crossed up. Take a look at that pitch. You can see he didn't shift over and block it. He tried to glove it. And I don't know if he expected another pitch or not, but you can see how late he reacted to that. That enables Green to move over to third. But Kruder had a long visit with Carlos Castillo, possibly going over the signs with a runner at second.
Now down to third. Nobody out. It scored a wild pitch against Castillo. And Canseco's got a great opportunity for another RBI. That'll do it. Base hit up the middle. Canseco's 2 for 2 with both RBIs on the night, and the Blue Jays have tied it.
Well, back to where we started. 2-2 ball game, and Canseco's done all the damage against Castillo. Didn't really hammer this ball. It was an inside fastball. Castillo gets it a little bit in on his hands, but Jose is so strong. He fights it off and strokes it into center field. Didn't make Castillo too happy.
Blue Jays have 6 hits off Castillo in 2+ innings.
This is one of the situations in which Canseco can run with Delgado hitting behind him, because Fletcher is another left-handed hitter behind Delgado.
Grounded down to first. Norton, high throw. Caruso comes down with it. and a double play. And either Canseco came up lame or he gave a terrible effort running down to second.
Now, he didn't get a real good jump off the bag at first, and I don't think there's anything wrong with him. A few days ago, he had a little bit of a strained hamstring, but he stole a base in Baltimore.
I'm wondering if he's wondering if it was caught on the fly. He just didn't appear to know where to go.
Well, see, he broke and then he stopped. That's why he was so far away. He wasn't even close because he faked as if he were going to steal it, and that's why he didn't get a very good jump.
2 down, nobody on, just like that.
Now watch him. See, he stops. He comes to a complete stop. He had faked a steal, and then he sees Norton grab the ball, and then he just shut it down. Just didn't run hard at all after that.
No,
Figured he was.
If Ed Sprague can make a play of it, Canseco runs faster than Sprague. Popped up. Draws a crowd in shallow center. Abbott makes the catch, and the inning is over. Canseco, though, does contribute with the bat as he drives in another run to tie the game at 2.
Remember this, September 2nd, 1990. Blue Jays facing the Indians. Jerry Brown flies out to right field to Junior Felix, and there it is. No-hitter for Dave Stieb. That was back in 1990. Now in 1998, he's back on the mound again.
And I think everybody watching that game had the same thought when Jerry Brown was up. Anywhere but Junior Felix. But he caught the ball.
Yeah, he did.
He was an adventure out there, wasn't he?
Well, Dave had knocked on the door so often. He had 5 one-hitters and finally picked up the no-hitter. I mean, he had no-hit stuff every time he went to the mound.
Late in 1988, he had consecutive one-hitters, and in each game he had the no-hitter until 2 outs in the 9th. Once Julio Franco got him on a bad hop base hit over the head of Manny Lee, and once Jim Traber, I believe, looped one over first base for a base hit with 2 outs in the 9th. And then the next year, in what is not one of Stieb's one-hitters, as Chad Kruger, the catcher, leads off the 3rd, he took a perfect game into the 9th. Pop up, maybe a play for Sprague. Leaning over, has he got it or not? Doesn't have it.
Now, he couldn't get to that rolled up tarp in time. I think that ball hit between the stands and the tarp. Watch where this ball lands. The fans are leaning over the field, and he actually looked like he got a piece of it. But he was leaning over that tarp, and the fans were kind of going for the ball as well.
1-1 the count. Just to finish up, in one of the games that's not a one-hitter, he took a perfect game into the 9th, got 2 outs at SkyDome in 1989, and then Roberto Kelly doubled, and Stieb eventually gave up a run and hung on to win 2-1. But if his book was called Tomorrow I'll Be Perfect, and that started to hurt him after a little while because he got so close and people started making fun of the name of the book a little bit. But then the no-hitter was one of the high points of his entire career. Leadoff man in the 3rd is Kruger.
But now as he works through the lineup for the first time, everybody on that White Sox bench has made notes about the fact Stieb's throwing an awful lot of breaking balls. So even though his fastball won't touch 90, it could become an effective pitch for him second time through. That was a changeup that got away from him. We used to have some very deep conversations about pitching theory.
Sprague has to back up to get this one. Long throw is on the money.
Eddie Sprague unloaded in a hurry. He had the advantage of the catcher running down the line. It's deep at 3rd. And he made a good play behind Dave Stieb to pick up the first out of the 3rd inning. But we used to sit around and debrief one another after a start, talk about how he did and what I thought he could have done differently, and it always got back to one thing. I always felt like he should throw more fastballs. But he had such a great slider that he could practically throw it any time he wanted to.
Ray Durham, the batter. Now, in the end, did he see it your way, or did you give in and let him do what he wanted to do?
No, he never saw it my way. It went so far as I would have Steve Busby, one of my teammates in Kansas City, that in my estimation was as talented as Dave Stieb. He had the same type of stuff. He didn't have that devastating slider, but he had a very similar overall package, and he was as intense as Dave Stieb. But when Busby was a broadcaster for the Texas Rangers, I used to bring him over to Dave and ask Steve if he would tell him what he would do differently had he had a chance to pitch over again. And it always got back to using my fastball more.
You know what's funny is Pat Henkin, and he's got different stuff than Steve, but Henkin is kind of a protege of Steve. When Henkin came up, Steve was a veteran. They hung around a lot together. Henkin always talks about fastball, 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 even though the curveball is an important pitch for him. Little grounder, Steve's got it. He'll have to run to the mound himself and makes the play.
Dave has always been a very good fielder. He got a little smile for Delgado, saying, "Where were you, man? I was ready to flip it to you." But once he saw that Delgado vacated the bag, he took off and beat Ray Durham to first. Watch him as he gloves it and puts the ball in his hand, ready to toss it to Delgado. And then, whoops, no Delgado, so he has to take it himself.
Couple of outs here in the third. Line on Stieb so far, both runs coming in on the Albert Bell homer. Jose Canseco's driven in a couple for the Blue Jays. It's tied at 2. Big hitter here with 2 outs and nobody on. If Caruso gets on, then Frank Thomas comes up with a man on base. That's what he'll do. Caruso slams it down the right field line. And he's got plenty of speed to get into second base.
Caruso picks up his 12th double of the season, a 2-out double just inside the bag at first. It's another breaking ball from Stieb. And Caruso sits back and pulls it by Carlos Delgado.
1 for 2 on the night is Caruso. Here comes Thomas. Now, how does Stieb attack this? A base open, but on deck is Bell, who's hotter and who's already homered tonight.
You know what? Frank Thomas has said, even though Albert Bell has been scorching in July, pitchers still walking. What's wrong with that pitch?
That's one reason pitchers still walking.
Yeah. Frank Thomas, although he'll argue differently, has a pretty small strike zone.
He argued so much back earlier in the season that Ron Shula, the GM of the White Sox, told him to lay off because he felt it was having a negative effect, that the umps were starting to take away calls from the White Sox because of how much Thomas argued. Popped him up. Graybeck makes the catch, and Dave Stieb gets a huge out to end the third. He gets Thomas with a runner at second, and Albert Bell has to wait until the fourth. 3 complete, tied at 2 as we go to TSN tonight. Tomorrow and Friday, coverage will begin at 9 in the morning Eastern Time, 6 in the morning Pacific Time, and we show you a couple of the big groups and when they'll be going. You'll get just a hint of Tiger Woods tomorrow, but plenty of him on a Friday, obviously, and it's the other way around for Justin Leonard.
You'll see a couple of great groups there. Justin Leonard, the defending champ.
Tied at 2, top of the fourth. Dave Stieb, the pitcher for the Blue Jays, gave up the Albert Bell homer in the first. Ed Sprague leads off the fourth. Jose Canseco has doubled, singled, and driven in both Blue Jay runs. That's where it stands right now. Blue Jays thumped 9-3 in game 1. Got a day game tomorrow. Just a quick trip into Chicago with 3 games in less than 24 hours. Then it's home to face the Yankees beginning Friday night. Sprague sends it to center field. Playable for Abbott. 1 down. Some great pitching matchups when the Yankees get to SkyDome over the weekend. All the pitchers for the Yankees are great, so it's tough to go wrong if you're looking to see some of the big starters. Tickets are available for all 3 games. Friday night, David Wells and Roger Clemens. Saturday afternoon, Orlando Hernandez El Duque against Juan Guzman. And then Sunday afternoon, Andy Pettitte, who is on a roll right now, against Woody Williams. Andy Pettitte's up to 12-5.
Yeah, he got off to a slow start, and everybody was concerned about Andy Pettitte. Joe Torre didn't say a word about him. Just let him go out there and take his turn every 5th day, and all of a sudden he's 7 over 500.
Alessandro with a drive to fairly deep left. Albert Bell's got room. 2 down. Well, the Yankees tonight are leading the Tigers, and the Boston Red Sox are leading as well, 1-0 over Cleveland. And Pedro Martinez against Bartolo Colon. What a pitching matchup that is.
Bad night for hitters in Boston with those 2 guys.
Blue Jays with a loss in Game 1 of the doubleheader tonight, falling 8 games back of the Red Sox. 2 down for Graybeck, who lined out sharply to third base his first time up. The 0-1 from Carlos Castillo, way high.
A little bit of a homecoming here for Graybeck against the White Sox. He spent part of 6 seasons as a member of this organization. 6 seasons in the big leagues, that is.
Caruso, the bobble.
Well, that's what you get with a young shortstop right there. He tried to one-hand it. Had he taken another step, gone down with both hands, he would have been able to make an easy play on it. This is his 20th error of the season. You can see he kind of swipes at it, but if he takes another step, squares up on it, he's got a chance to make an easy play of it.
Each of the last 2 years at A-ball, he committed exactly 40 errors, and he's made 20 here in his first major league season. Here's Gonzalez. Will it be 6 consecutive at-bats when he swings at the first pitch? Did it all 4 times last night, first time tonight. 6 in a row. We got to get the Elias Sports Bureau on the line here and see if they keep records on this kind of thing.
Well, there are hitter profiles that suggest what a hitter hits when he puts the first pitch in play, and we'll have to check that out. But he is a free swinger. There was a point when you try to be aggressive, but at the same time you have to be selective.
But 2 pitches in this at bat, he swung at the ball, he's taken the strike. That's really the big problem.
Yeah. Gary Matthews has been frustrated at different points of the season with some of the younger hitters' approach, trying to get them to be more selective and swing at the fastballs. I mean, think back to Buddy Bell when we saw him in the Detroit series, and he's got a lot of young players on his team, and he made the statement while we were there that young players take about 6 or 7 years before they really understand how to play like a veteran.
Granter down to third. Ventura. Gonzalez is retired. Blue Jays along with him as the Caruso error doesn't do any damage. White Sox will come up trying to take the lead. It's all tied up at 2. Comiskey Park in Chicago tied at 2. Blue Jays and White Sox. Dave Stieb, his first start in more than 5 years. Through the first 3 innings, he's been pretty good. Both of the Chicago runs coming on a home run back in the first after 2 were out. Mark D'Alessandro has helped him out by throwing out a couple of runners. No strikeouts yet, but only 1 walk. And the homer to Albert Bell. Back in the first inning, Bell's 8th home run in his last 7 games.
Stieb threw him a breaking ball. It was a slider that stays on the inside part of the plate. It really hangs, and when Albert Bell is hot, he doesn't miss any hangers. He's one of the best mistake breaking ball hitters in all of baseball, and he is red hot now.
He hasn't hit like this since 1995 when he had that 50-50 season, 50 homers and better than 50 doubles, 52. And a homer in the first game as well. Stieb starts him with a fastball away.
Well, this is his 2nd season with the White Sox, and you can see over his last 8 games, 517. That's correct. He's 15 for 29 with 9 homers and 19 ribbies.
He's on pace to set all-time Chicago White Sox records for home runs and RBIs.
Well, he had an off season last year. As I mentioned, last year was his first season here. He hit just 274 with only 30 homers and 116 ribbies. That's an off season. For comparison's sake, look back to '96 when he hit .311 for the Indians, pounded out 48 homers and 148 RBIs. So his numbers were off rather dramatically.
Stieb's behind 2-1. Hit hard down to third. Sprague to his left. And Albert Abel is retired. Stieb with a very big out on Frank Thomas to end the third, and now equally big to get Albert Abel here to begin the fourth. Well, how do you think he's doing? What did you expect from Dave Stieb tonight?
I think he hasn't had as good a breaking ball that he had 2 times ago when he pitched against the Mets and went 9 up and 9 down. He had a real good slider that night. We haven't seen that sharp break here tonight. He's thrown more curveballs like that first pitch to Ventura. But overall, I think he's done pretty well.
Ventura grounds one by the mound. Graybeck got him. 2 down. Well, there are a number of scouts here in the ballpark tonight. Are they here to see Dave Stieb?
I don't know. I imagine there's a couple of them. There seems to be more scouts than normal.
Yeah.
The Yankees have 2 scouts, but they're advancing for the upcoming series. There you see the 2 Yankee scouts in the front row, and the guy on the right is Bob Didier, former Blue Jays minor league coach. In the back, a couple of Marlins scouts, and that's kind of curious that there would be 2 Marlins scouts here. And they're here, obviously, to look at someone. I wouldn't expect that the White Sox would have anyone that they would be interested in.
It has to be something to do with the Blue Jays, whether it's a trade or a 3-way deal. If the Blue Jays are looking at trying to get one of the few remaining veterans on the Marlins team. Ordonez off the glove of Sprague. And with 2 outs, the White Sox have a base runner. We'll wait for the scoring on this play.
And it was another ground ball. Sprague got to it okay, but watch how he swipes his glove at it. Right there, he kind of tries to scoop it, and it hit off the thumb of his glove. He continues to pursue it, but he's charged with an error. And I think that will be a legitimate error in his mind. That's his 15th of the season. He got to it okay, but when he swiped at it, it went off his thumb.
Already 3 errors in this game. 1 by the Blue Jays, 2 by the White Sox. And it'll extend the inning for Greg Norton, who lined out sharply to Craig Graybeck his first time up.
You know what's really kind of funny? He hasn't lost any of those little movements that he always had. You know how he stretched his arm out like that, and he reminded himself to get on top.
Runner going. And a grounder almost hits him. Graybeck's got it in plenty of time to end the inning. 4 innings now for Dave Stieb. Just the 2-run homer to Albert Abel back in the first. All tied up at 2.
Back to Florida, where at one point the Expos trailed 4-1. We showed you how they tied it at 4-4. Vladimir Guerrero's solo home run gave them the lead. Shane Andrews, RBI double. Mark Rodzelenic, RBI double. Rondell White, RBI single. 7 unanswered runs. Expos now lead it 8-4.
Well, the Expos and Pirates are going to play tomorrow night on TSN at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Montreal with a lead on Florida right now. See if the Expos make some moves as the break approaches. Jason Schmidt and Carl Pavano, the pitching matchup. So are those supposed to be Canadian flags?
They're the Maple Leaf.
Those are, well, I recognize it as being a Maple Leaf. Those are left over from Canada Day. Some Canadians who have come down to Chicago, we were told. We saw some Canadians from the Niagara area down in Baltimore. Shannon Stewart, the batter, grounds it out to short. Caruso takes care of this one in a hurry.
See, there's another play where Caruso could have taken one more step, planted and fired with both feet on the ground and had a much truer throw. But those are things he's going to learn. He's got great tools, good range. We saw him make a couple plays behind the bag at second. But watch how he throws off balance here. No need at all to make this throw off balance. You just open yourself up for an errant throw, and you got another step. You plant yourself, and you make a strong throw.
Back in the spring, Caruso was supposed to go back down to the minors. He was just an A-ball last year. They had Benji Gill who about 5 years ago was the Mike Caruso of his time. Great tools, but just couldn't put it all together. Caruso beat out Gill for the job, and he's just 20 or 21 years of age. It's such a young Chicago team right now. They're paying such a high percentage of their budget to Albert Abel and Frank Thomas. Nobody else can really make a whole lot, so they've got a lot of young players.
Well, Robin Ventura makes a good contract as well. He's up around $5 million too, but this is his last year.
It might be his last month. He might be gone by the end of the month, the first trading deadline. There was a big article in one of the Chicago papers today proposing a White Sox Cub deal, which obviously doesn't happen very often. It did happen when Sammy Sosa was traded for George Bell. The Cubs have needed a third baseman for how long?
Since Ron Santo quit.
2-2 to Green.
But I think the timing is probably such that the White Sox will be very reluctant to give the Cubs a Robin Ventura unless they got some kind of blue chip prospect in return.
Cubs are already dominating the local newspapers and radio shows. But there's no question that although finally an appeal and no swing, there's no question that although the White Sox want to keep Ventura, they'd love to get rid of Bell actually and to keep Ventura, but they just probably won't be able to do so.
Boy, you know what? That's an interesting proposition. Somebody picks up Albert Bell,
but he's got 3 more years at $11 million. Ventura's a free agent at the end of this year.
But you know what? You might convince the White Sox to take some of that salary.
Green with a base hit to left. He's 2 for 3.
What kind of spark would Albert be in a pennant race? Put him down there in the Dodger lineup.
Well, the Dodgers might be the only team to consider it, because I think just about every club would worry about clubhouse chemistry. But they obviously, I mean, they've gone in a whole different direction.
Well, you know, they've got guys that don't even know each other on that team. Who are you? Oh, we just got you today.
And they're at the stage now. They've committed to winning this year, even though they're 500 or just below. And if they get a left fielder, they'll move a guy from third to right and right to left just to make it all fit. They really don't care. Green's going. No throw.
No chance whatsoever for Kruder. Castillo didn't even give Sean Green a second thought. His 21st steal of the season, and as soon as Castillo picks up that leg, Green is off and running. Kruder comes out of the chute and doesn't even throw.
Only one down. Green at second. 1-0 the count on Canseco, who's had a very productive night at the plate. Doubled in a run in the first, singled in a run in the third. Hasn't homered in 2 weeks, but he missed a few games before the break, and then the break was mixed in there as well. He's in a bit of a homer drought, but he continues to drive in some runs. Now at 53 RBIs. 1-2. Must have been thinking something else.
Yeah, he was looking breaking ball, and they crossed him up, and he got a high fastball. He had the right area of the plate, but he was looking for something down. He was expecting to get a slider or a curveball. And when you don't get the pitch that you're looking for, you don't swing.
He swung there, and he wasn't close. Big strikeout for Castillo. 2 down as we go back to baseball tonight.
Well, Dan, the New York Yankees at 33-15, the best road record in Major League Baseball, are adding to it. Ricky Ledée's double scores Jorge Posada. That sparked a 3-run fifth, followed by a 2-run sixth. The Yankees now lead the Tigers 5-0, bottom of the 6th.
And the Yankees, led by Chuck Knobloch, come into Toronto to take on the Blue Jays for 3 games over the weekend. And you can see Blue Jays and the Yankees Friday night on the CBC. That is your next opportunity to see the Blue Jays. Brian Williams and John Cerruti.
And you might even get to see Bernie Williams. They expect to get Bernie Williams back off the disabled list on Friday.
And you might even see Tony Phillips.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Delgado the batter. Green at second, 2 down. Carlos tonight is 0 for 2 in game 2, and now 0 for 25 in this slump. An awfully good hitter, but he's making his way up the Blue Jays' longest hitless streak list. Longest ever was Ed Sprague, who had a 35 at a bat drive.
Here we go again.
You know, I wasn't even going to do it.
Here we
but
go.
now that you've started, now that you've pushed the button.
Here comes the old shot at his partner.
Forget it. Ed Sprague went 35 at-bats in '94. You got knocked down a notch a couple of years ago. Alex Gonzalez had a 33 at-bat drought, and John Albert Buck Martinez 32 at-bats without a hit, 1985. Questionable scoring, though.
Yeah, there was a couple that should have been hits.
2-2. Hey, you're in good company. Kelly Gruber's up here twice. Hey, Mr. Tabler. Look at that. Mr. Tabler's right there.
Mr. Tabler's there, too?
Yeah. George Bell's there. You're all right.
It's a great list.
Yep.
Proud to be on it.
2-2 the count. Tried to bend it back over the outside corner and missed. Castillo's just 22 years of age. Second year at the major leagues. The other Castillo, the one who's more familiar to Blue Jay fans, Tony Castillo, was released by the White Sox a few weeks ago. Got it. And the inning is over as Delgado's struggles continue. Blue Jays will strand Green at second, and this game remains tied at 2. What to expect from Dave Stieb tonight. 4 innings, 2 runs, 64 pitches. How's he doing so far?
I think he's doing okay. It took him a while to really get confident with his breaking ball. He's thrown a few more fastballs second time through the order, and he got a couple of big outs. The out to close out the 3rd inning when he got Frank Thomas to pop up, and then he was able to pitch to Albert Bell without anybody on. So he's starting to feel a little better, I'm sure, and it looks to me like his stamina is okay. 64 pitches to this point. Just the one walk. He hasn't struck out a batter yet.
Jeff Abbott, Chad Kruder, and then back to the top of the order for Ray Durham. So Stieb will begin his 3rd trip through the order here in the 5th inning. Blue Jays, as you saw, hitting the White Sox 7-4, all tied at 2. D'Alessandro has thrown out 2 White Sox. That's been a big help as well. Abbott with a base hit, and then he was one of the guys thrown out trying to steal. Also has committed an error in the outfield. Buck, when you look back at Dave Stieb's numbers, and we showed them off the top of the show, a lifetime record of 175 and 135. That's a good record, but it doesn't really do justice to the kind of pitcher that Stieb was.
Not at all.
Why didn't he win more?
Well, I think initially he didn't win more because the team behind him wasn't very good. We didn't play well in his heyday, basically. He was the all-star starting pitcher for the American League in '83 and '84, and the team hadn't really caught up to Dave Stieb. Just think what he would have done had he pitched in '92 and '93 for those great teams in his heyday. I mean, he was a dominant pitcher. And remember all the great conversations that the media used to have about the Blue Jays don't score any runs for Dave Stieb because they don't like him. Well, I think the opponents were so tough and so respectful of Dave Stieb's ability that they really played us tough every time he was on the mound.
2-2 pitch is popped up into shallow right. Back goes Graybeck. Gives way to Canseco. Let's go to baseball tonight.
Dan, let's go to Fenway. Bartolo Colon versus Pedro Martinez. 5th inning scoreless. Midre Cummins takes Bartolo Colon out of the ballpark. Pedro Martinez leads Colon 1-0. Colon 1 run on 7 hits. Martinez 3 hits through 8 1/3 shutout.
Boy, that's a great pitching matchup. Young Bartolo Colon and the great Pedro Martinez. And he's been on a pretty good roll.
Yeah, he has.
Saberhagen and Avery and Wakefield. I mean, they're hanging in there. Everybody expects the Red Sox to fade out of the picture, but it's not happening.
Chad Kruder takes it low. Well, the Blue Jays are going to play the Red Sox 4 times. Beginning a week from tomorrow at Fenway Park. Those 2 guys, Martinez and Colon, were the 2 most commonly mentioned pitchers when Joe Torre when he was asked about who he would start in the All-Star game. Those 2 guys got a lot of mention, but David Wells ended up getting the start.
Well, you've got to be pretty impressed by Mike Hargrove, the Indians manager, selecting Wells over his own pitcher, Bartolo Colon.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I said Joe Torre. Yeah, Mike Hargrove, of course.
But it was Hargrove's selection, and he very easily could have picked Colon, and I don't think too many people could have argued with him.
1-1 the count on Kruder, who's grounded out in his only at-bat. Takes a strike.
At the time of the All-Star game, Colon was 2nd in the American League in ERA at 2.52. But David Wells having pitched the perfect game and the Yankees having such a great season and there being no starting Yankees in that lineup. I think that had a lot to do with it.
I think you're right. To have that kind of a record and not have anybody represented. Stieb through 4 1/3 has given up 2 runs on 4 hits. 2-2 the counter here on Chad Kruder. Kind of a muggy night, but nothing really overbearing. Shouldn't be too tough on a pitcher.
No, I don't think so. It's not an oppressive night where you could really run out of gas in a hurry.
Full count pitch. Got him. Took a little something off, Buck.
Well, he was always very good at throwing what he calls a dead fish. It's like an 80% fastball. It's not a full-blown changeup. He's got great arm action, and the ball just sinks away from Kruder. I mean, he did this before it was really a popular pitch. He had the knack for throwing about 85% velocity and getting some good late movement. He threw it an awful lot when he was behind 2-0, when hitters were really geared up for a fastball.
Back to the top of the order for Ray Durham, who's 1 for 2. Well, there are probably a lot of people watching tonight who remember Dave Stieb from the end of his career. He threw the no-hitter in 1990. He won 18 games that year. I don't know if this is accurate, but he had those 2 bad years in 86 and 87. And to me, even though he won a lot of games after that, 88, 89, 90, when I think of him at his best, it's way back, 82, 83, 84.
No question about it. The All-Star game was here in Chicago in 83, and he just really handcuffed the National League.
Going to have to make the play. Going to have to get to the bag, and he won't get there in time. Durham legs it out.
And not much anybody could do about that. That was a perfect bunt. Delgado came off the bag, and Durham executes the drag bunt to perfection. He takes it right with him up the first base line. He gets it by Dave Stieb right toward the second baseman. Delgado comes off the bag, and now Stieb has to try to beat Durham to the bag, and he can't do it.
So now again, Stieb is going to face Caruso, again faced with the prospect of dealing with Thomas in a tough situation if Caruso can reach. And Caruso did reach last time, doubling into the right field corner. As his average up to 316. Not bad for a guy who was an A-ball last year.
Obviously, he's playing with a lot of confidence. Even though he's committed 20 years in the field, he's been able to separate his defense from his hitting.
Durham with good wheels, not going, but the Blue Jays thought he might have been. You wonder if Jerry Manuel is a little hesitant to start runners now that Thomas and Bell are starting to heat up. You want to give them every chance they can to get up there with a runner on base, regardless of where that runner happens to be.
Well, I think with Durham, he will continue to run Ray Durham. In this situation, obviously, you're still going to pitch to Caruso. You want to get him out and not face Frank Thomas in this inning.
Want to know the count on Caruso. Durham took about 3 steps towards second base, and Stieb hadn't even started his motion yet. Finally, Durham said, I better get back.
As Dave still had his eye on Durham, and Ray took a couple of steps towards second. Watch the move here. 1, 2, whoops, he's not going home yet, and Stieb just stepped off the rubber and checks Durham.
Crowd starting to get a little bit restless. The Blue Jays strategy here. Tied at 2 in the bottom of the 5th inning. Not going. And Caruso slugs it to right. Back goes Canseco. Gone.
Stieb throws a fastball to Mike Caruso. Probably had Ray Durham on his mind at first. And Caruso hits it into the Blue Jays bullpen. Number 4 on the season. Second 2-run home run allowed by Stieb here tonight.
And a 4-2 Chicago lead. And now it's Thomas. First 2 homers that Stieb has allowed this season. His numbers in his 4 relief appearances were outstanding. 10 1/3, no homers, only 1 walk allowed. He has walked 1 here tonight. That was Thomas back in the first, and then a walk scored on the Bell homer. In addition to the walk, Thomas has also popped up. Lays off high, 2 balls and a strike. Albert Bell waiting on deck. See how Stieb controls his emotions. He's in a tough part of the lineup, but already trailing. Behind in the count to Thomas with Bell waiting. Inside, not close to walking. So he'll have to face Albert Bell with a runner on, and the White Sox threatening to really blow it open. Stieb getting more and more upset, and that Caruso home run, the source of his anger right now.
But it was a fastball up and away to Caruso. Stieb was concerned about Ray Durham at first base. Durham had already shown him that he was thinking about stealing second, and maybe that's what influenced the fastball pitch.
Here's Albert. 9 homers in his last 8 games. What would you do when Dave Stieb would get in one of these kinds of a moods, when he would get upset at himself and upset at the world? What do you say to him on
Well,
that?
you got to go out there and say, listen, Dave, just keep pitching. Your stuff is still good. Yeah, we got hurt by that last pitch, but now we've got to refocus and give us an opportunity to get back in this game. Sometimes it would work, and sometimes it wouldn't.
Well, he's kind of a contradiction, right? I mean, he's all gruff on the outside, but underneath you wonder what the other side of him is like. He's mellowed a little bit in the last few years. He had stuff that 99% of the pitchers would have killed for, yet at times you tell us he didn't trust his stuff.
Yeah, he was, you know, and it's not unusual. I mean, there are a lot of pitchers that pitch like that. Don't realize how good their stuff is. Oh, that's a pretty good pitch right there. Merriweather didn't give Stieb that outside corner. He made a good pitch with a breaking ball. Let me tell you, when you don't get those borderline calls against guys like Albert Bell and Frank Thomas, they're going to catch up to you.
And you could see Stieb slump his shoulders when he didn't get the call from Merriweather. He's tried that pitch to both Thomas and Bell and hasn't gotten it called his way yet.
Now, that's a pretty good example of what a good hitter Albert Bell is. He has seen so many breaking balls from Stieb. He feels that he can fight off the fastball like this right here. And he's very late on it, but he's still got the breaking ball on his mind. We talked about what a great mistake breaking ball hitter he is. And he is so focused and so intense.
And so hot right now with 2 homers already in the doubleheader. And the 2 homers, Buck, giving him 299 in his career. He is the only major leaguer to hit 30 or more home runs each of the last 6 seasons, and he's already at 27 here this year. Base hit left field. Up to second goes Thomas. All of this coming after 2 are out and nobody on. The bunt single by Durham, the homer by Caruso, the walk to Thomas, and the base hit by Bell.
Now, Mel Queen on the phone down in the Blue Jays bullpen, and they'll get somebody throwing. This is a pretty good breaking ball. Bell steps, keeps his back, and even though it's down in the strike zone, he is able to get to it and drives it into left field. I mean, he's just as hot as B.J. Surhoff was for the Orioles.
Robert Person starting to get loose. Pitched a couple of innings last night against the Orioles. Gave up 3 solo homers in one of those innings. Robert Ventura bounced in and blocked by D'Alessandro. One of the oddities for Stieb that he never had to face first time around, obviously, is he doesn't know what he's going to pitch next. He doesn't know if this is an audition, if this is a one-time effort, if he's being showcased, if he's in the Blue Jay plans.
Well, initially, when we were told that Stieb would start, it was between Stieb and Robert Person to start this game.
Well, the decision apparently was made on the basis of what we've just seen tonight. Person pitching in relief last night and able to pitch in relief again tonight. The Blue Jays not feeling that Stieb could do that kind of a thing because he has been used exclusively as a starter this year and throughout his career.
Tell you what, he has been squeezed by Chuck Merriweather at different points of this ball game. That last pitch was a pretty good breaking ball.
I think that's what he just said. Two and two. Thomas and Bell on the base. A couple of runs in for the White Sox already to take a 4-2 lead in the bottom of the 5th. All the runs for Chicago coming on home runs. Down to first, fair ball. Delgado's got it. Stieb covering, and the inning is over. But 2 more for Chicago. Caruso homers off Stieb, and through 5, the hometown White Sox looking to sweep a doubleheader. Lead 4-2. Let's go to TSN tonight. For Dave Stieb, he threw 31 pitches, gave up a 2-out 2-run homer to Mike Caruso, and now finds himself trailing 4-2 to Carlos Castillo, who is making only his 2nd start of the season. Dave Stieb left behind a life of retirement and relaxation out in Lake Tahoe to come back, and the competitive juices are flowing once again for Mr. Stieb.
Watching him on the bench, it's like a flashback because he is still as competitive as ever. Similar lines here. Castillo, 5 innings, 7 hits. He has given up just the 2 runs. He hasn't walked a batter. Dave Stieb has been touched up for 2 2-run home runs, and that's the difference in this ball game.
For the Blue Jays in the 6th, it'll be Darren Fletcher, Ed Sprague, and Mark D'Alessandro. Regulars Mike Stanley and Tony Fernandez sitting out game 2 after playing in game 1. Fletcher starting at DH has flied out to center field twice. This one is looped foul, third base side. Ventura's got some room and makes a nice play.
Robin Ventura is very familiar with just how much room he has over there in foul ground. He gets to the railing and puts out his hand and braces himself as he makes the catch. Interesting to see him in another uniform.
Yeah.
He has played so well for the White Sox.
He has struggled a lot the last 3 or 4 weeks, but I think a lot of teams will ignore that to a certain extent and look at his track record. He's been one of the best third basemen in baseball the last 5 years.
He is such a steady hitter, and you can hit him in anywhere in the middle of the order.
Ed Sprague drives it to left center. Abbott into the gap, 2 down. Well, the Dodgers could have an interest. The Giants could have an interest. A lot of teams out there would take a Robin Ventura. Not a lot of people showing up for White Sox games here. They're averaging only about 16,000. You'll have an interest in this because you're a collector. The biggest announced crowd, the biggest number of tickets sold for any White Sox game this year, 32,000 a week ago on Beanie Baby night. But apparently the crowd, the actual people in the seats, only about half that. A lot of people showed up, got their Beanie Babies, and went home.
And left.
Didn't even stay for the ball game. That's a sad commentary on baseball on the south side of Chicago right now.
You know, with the trend of ballparks being built in downtown areas, I wonder if they've thought about that. Had they built this downtown on the lakeshore in Chicago,
oh, sure,
it would have been a gold mine.
But this is where they own the land, so they tore down the old place and built it across the street.
But you can imagine people along Michigan Avenue shopping in the morning and going to a restaurant and moseying over to the ballpark somewhere downtown. I mean, that would have been a tremendous attraction.
It was a little bit eerie at the beginning of game 1, which started at 4 o'clock local time. They only opened the gates half an hour before the game. And when they announced the gates were open, only about 4 people came in. D'Alessandro grounds out, and the Blue Jays go quickly in the 6th. Castillo and the White Sox leading 4-2.
The White Sox are coming to town on July 21st and 22nd, so give us a call.
Tomorrow night, the Argos and the Lions, a couple of 0-2 squads, get it going in CFL action here on TSN, 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific time. Also, the British Open tomorrow during the day on TSN. Expos and Pirates, prime time. Here tonight, Chicago leading Toronto 4-2. 2-run homers by Albert Bell and Mike Caruso off Dave Stieb. Jose Canseco has doubled in and singled in the 2 Toronto runs here tonight. Stieb is still out there. Here in the bottom of the 6th inning, in the first pitch off the bat of Maglio Ordonez is hit a long way to left field, but Shannon Stewart's got room.
Just a long out. Stewart ran under it on the warning track in left. Ordonez hit it hard, but it hung up for Stewart.
He's getting close to 100 pitches now. That'll be 96 for him, and he started down at Syracuse, completed a couple of games, and routinely went 7 or 8 innings. And I guess he hasn't lost that much of his stamina in the last month, which hasn't been a very active one for him, just 4 relief appearances. The way things have gone the last couple of games with Woody Williams and Pat Henkin both getting bombed, this is the best start the Blue Jays have had in a while. One and one the count to the first baseman, to Greg Norton, 0 for 2, hitting just .226. Another young player trying to get some playing time and benefiting from the doubleheader. The doubleheader, by the way, came about because of a rare tie game between these 2 teams back in April. Tied through 6 innings. It started raining, didn't stop. The stats counted, but the game is replayed in its entirety.
So at the end of the season, the Blue Jays will have played 163 games. There'll be numbers for 163 games because all those stats through 6 innings count.
One ball, 2 strikes to Norton.
The one thing that I'm wondering about with Dave Stieb is whether or not he will gain more velocity on his fastball as he continues to pitch and work on his mechanics, whether some of that velocity will come back.
Off the end of the bat, Sprague a long way to his left, and he got him. Nice play by Sprague for the 2nd out.
You wonder why Sprague would go so far to his left to make a play here, but he's got a better angle on it than Gonzalez because Alex has to come running toward his right. This ball takes Sprague toward the bag at first, and he threw out Greg Norton, 2nd out of the inning.
Also an error for Sprague tonight, his 15th of the season, as he continues to battle the shoulder, saying some days it feels 100% and some days it feels like he just had surgery, which he had last September. 2 down, Jeff Abbott, the center fielder. About 10 days ago, when the Blue Jays were 4 over and seemingly on their way to narrowing the gap on the Red Sox, the talk was who would they acquire and how long till they really got back in the race. But now, having lost 5 of 6, you begin to think another way. Will they try to trade a salary? Will the Tom Evanses and Kelvin Escobars make their way up from AAA? How's Gordash going to play it over the next couple of months? Line to right. Canseco reaches up and hauls it in as Stieb gets the White Sox in order in the 6th, and it remains Chicago 4 and the Blue Jays 2. Sox trying to sweep the doubleheader. They really tore it up against the Blue Jays in Game 1 of this doubleheader. Didn't waste any time at all getting to Pat Henkin. First batter for them in the bottom of the first, Ray Durham. And Ray Durham crushed it, his 10th home run of the season.
It's an overhand curveball that he spanked over the wall in right center. He stayed back, used his hands, and he got the White Sox off to a good start. Then Albert Bell hits what looked to be an inning-ending double play, but Fernandez can't make the throw to first base to close out that first frame.
And then the next batter, Robin Ventura, makes the Blue Jays pay.
A 2-run home run deep into the seats in right, and the White Sox put up a 3-spot in the first.
And Albert Bell doing what he's been doing almost every game since the All-Star break.
But you can see his reaction. He thought he had missed it, and it creeps into the White Sox bullpen. He is red hot.
Game 1, all kinds of offense, 3 home runs for the White Sox. Charlie O'Brien with a 2-run double. A long night for Pat Henkin. Blue Jays made a ton of mistakes. Tony Fernandez with the bases loaded on walks and nobody out chased the first pitch from Jamie Navarro and grounded into a double play. Eddie Rodriguez sent Craig Graybeck home from first on a double by Crespo with nobody out. And the Blue Jays down 8-1, and he was thrown out, costing the Blue Jays a couple of runs. And now a sweaty Dave Stieb on the wrong end right now of a 4-2 score. A new pitcher for the White Sox, Keith Folk, is in from the pen.
Well, Keith Folk 2-1. He was the winner in yesterday's game against Minnesota. 45 2/3 innings, just 35 hits. He's another one of those former Giants that came over in the deal that the White Sox pulled last July. Wilson Alvarez, Danny Darwin, and Roberto Hernandez going to San Francisco.
And only Darwin remains in San Francisco, ironically. Graybeck starting both ends of the doubleheader. Gonzalez on deck, then Stewart.
I tell you, he's seeing the ball pretty well tonight. That was a hanging slider up, and he got after it pretty well, but fouled it into the upper deck.
We'll see in a moment when Alex Gonzalez comes up if he swings at another first pitch. He's done it his last 6 at-bats, and that's only when we started noticing it. Who knows how far it goes back. 0-2, the count on Graybeck. The 1-2. High pitch that he fights off and fouls down the right field line and will find the seats. Where do you think this franchise is heading? They are saddled by Bell's contract. They've signed Frank Thomas with options through 2006, yet at the same time they're trying to rebuild with 8 rookies on the team.
Yeah, it's so difficult when you have a couple of players that are making the majority of your money. You can't really spread it among other veteran type of players, and you have to really be patient with the youngsters until they get their feet on the ground in the big leagues.
1 ball, 2 strikes. Graybeck says it hit him, and Chuck Merriweather agrees. Let's go to baseball tonight.
And we'll take you to Tiger Stadium. Tim Raines on base. Jorge Posada, his 9th home run of the season. It's a 2-run shot just moments ago. Chuck Knobloch added a 3-run shot. Hideki Irabu looks good for the victory. Right now, the Yanks are up 10-0.
Now, Knobloch has been setting the table all year long, but he hasn't been the offensive contributor that he was for the Twins. Now it looks like he's starting to heat up a little bit.
And the Yankees at SkyDome over the weekend. Here's Gonzalez. He didn't swing. He pulled the bat back, and for the first time in 7 at-bats, he takes a pitch.
Blue Jays would love to get a little deeper into their lineup here after getting Graybeck on. Scored 1 in the first and 1 in the third.
Runner on the count on Gonzalez. Graybeck at first, nobody out. And this White Sox bullpen is vulnerable. Matt Karchner is the closer, but he's blown his last 2 save opportunities, and Bill Seamus is getting some opportunities. Karchner was on the DL as well. And it's a lot of guys you don't know a lot about. Keith Folk, who's in the game now, Scott Air, Brian Ward, who pitched in game 1, and Bobby Howry. No-name bunch. 1 and 2.
You know, when you think about it, when the Blue Jays played the White Sox in the American League Championship Series a few years ago, they looked like an organization that was going to be tough for a long time. Jack McDowell, Wilson Alvarez, and Alex Fernandez, the heart of their starting rotation, and economically they had to move all those players.
This one is sent to right field. And it is run down at the last moment by Ordonez, who didn't expect the ball to carry that far.
Boy, it really carried on him. He was coming across at a pretty sharp angle, and then the ball sailed. But he really stayed with the ball and kind of cradles it as it's over his head. Take a look at the drive by Gonzalez. And here comes Ordonez, and now the ball sails, so he has to get back in a hurry. And watch his glove. You see how he just kind of cradles the ball in his glove and makes a fine running catch, saving extra bases for Keith Folk.
Now Shannon Stewart. A base hit, a run scored, and his 30th stolen base of the season back in the first inning as the Blue Jays took an early lead. Tomorrow afternoon, it's Chris Carpenter for the Blue Jays and James Baldwin for the White Sox. His ERA is well over 6. White Sox last in the major leagues in ERA, but they've looked pretty good here tonight. Jamie Navarro and Carlos Castillo, a couple of good starts.
You know, it's really been a combination of the offense and pitching that have given the Blue Jays problems since the All-Star break. Roger Clemens basically had the best start last time through the rotation. Carpenter got hit hard in Detroit. Same for Henkin, and they didn't have much run support there, and then they go to Baltimore and they got hammered in Baltimore.
Graybeck the lead at first, 1 down, and a 2-1 count on Stewart. And although the Blue Jays on one hand can say, well, they haven't lost any ground, they haven't gained any ground, and they've lost a tremendous opportunity. Another week has come off the schedule.
When the Orioles swept the 4-game series from the Red Sox, that was a great opportunity for the Blue Jays really to cut into that lead in the wild card.
A loss here in game 2, and the Blue Jays will be 9 back of Boston. And Stewart is hit on the hand, the second hit batter this inning.
That really changes the complexion of this inning now. With 1 out, runners at first and second, you bring Sean Green to the plate. Look at this fastball, runs inside to Stewart. He's late getting out of the way. Looked like he hit him on the right hand as his fingers were exposed on that bat. And there he is, ducks out of the way, and he's on base. And that's going to be the end of things for Keith Folk.
Faces 3 batters. Ordonez makes a fine running catch, and Folk hits both Graybeck and Stewart. And with 3 of the next 4 hitters, left-handed hitters for the Blue Jays, we're not going to see a left-handed pitcher. It's going to be Bobby Howry, another righty, coming in from the bullpen for the White Sox. There are a couple of lefties in the pen for Chicago. One of the Brian Ward worked an inning in game 1. The other was Scott Air, but Howry stays to face Sean Green.
Well, I'm sure Jerry Manuel is trying to get into the game a little deeper before he goes to the left-handers to save them for Delgado and Fletcher a little bit further down the lineup.
Howry on with Blue Jays at first and second. 1 out, top of the 7th, and Toronto down 2. Players the White Sox have in the big league club that they got in the San Francisco deal we've now seen in this game.
Well, if you're going to go for youth, you might as well get him in the big leagues and give him a chance to get comfortable in their surroundings. This will be his 13th appearance of the season. Now, Howry was called up from Calgary. He pitched for the Cannons in the Pacific Coast League. He was called up on the 21st of June, got to the ballpark just as the game started, made his major league debut that night.
Base runners for the Blue Jays. Graybeck at second, Stewart at first. Both of them hit by a pitch. There's one out in the inning, and here's Green, who after an 0 for 5 in game 1 is 2 for 3 in game 2. Chopper. Howry's got it. Green's retired. Another case of a Blue Jay hitter unfamiliar with a pitcher, but swinging at the first pitch. Let's go back to Gino.
And let's go to Fenway Park, where we check in on the Pedro Martinez-Bartolo Colon matchup. Pedro Martinez sitting on a 1-0 lead. Gets Brian Giles. Martinez, 4 hits, 9 Ks, 2 base on balls, complete game shutout, 1-0 your final score.
12-3 for Pedro Martinez as he continues to get very comfortable in the American League.
Well, like many of the great pitchers, he says, I want them to adjust to me. I'm not going to worry about them.
Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about what hitters are doing because they're not doing much against him.
There's Canseco to take outside ball 1. The Blue Jays have the potential tying runs on base at second and third, but there are 2 outs. Canseco's driven in both Blue Jay runs tonight with a double and a single. Challenged him, and he got it by him.
Pretty good fastball right there. Howry throws 2 different types of fastball. That was a 4-seamer that he'll use upstairs, and you can see this thing is straight and hard right by Canseco.
Volk, the Howry, the 3rd pitcher of the night, as he misses low ball 2. In game 1, the Blue Jays were 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position. They've done a better job here in game 2, but only because of Canseco. Off the end of the bat, it's fouled out of play, 2-2.
Canseco's having to go to school quickly against Bobby Howry. Not having a chance to see him before. He's seen good velocity. He's seen pretty good movement on the fastball. And that last pitch was a slider down and away. Howry was the closer for Calgary. He was 1-2 with 5 saves.
2-2 the count, and he hit him. 3 Blue Jays have been hit in the inning to load the bases.
Well, that ball bounced off of Canseco and hit Chad Kruger on the bare hand. He may have gotten the worst of it. He had his hand exposed, and when it hit Canseco, it looks like it hit right on the back of his throwing hand. This was always a real joy for me. You know, the trainer comes out and says, "Where does it hurt? Right here?" Yeah, that's just where it hurts. Watch this ball. 3rd batter hitting the inning. It hits Canseco on the hip, and then you can see it bounces and hits Chad Kruger right on his right hand. But those old trainers will come out there and they'll grab that hand, press on the spot that you got hit, and say, "Is that where it hurts?" Yeah, that's right where it hurts.
And then what do they do?
Then they freeze it a little bit. That's Nardi Contreras, the pitching coach, who's wandered out toward the mound.
Now, is this an official visit to the mound? It has to be, I guess, as Contreras visits with Howry. The bases are loaded with 2 outs, and Carlos Delgado is the batter. Obviously, Jerry Manuel doesn't really want to bring in either one of his left-handers right here.
Well, I think he was hoping that Howry would be able to get Canseco out, and then he would maybe start the next inning with a left-hander. But Jerry Manuel, pretty relaxed over there. He's got a 2-run lead. He was victorious in game 1 of this doubleheader, 9-3. And Nardi Contreras is finished with his message to young Bobby Howry.
Graybeck at 3rd, Stewart at 2nd, Canseco at 1st. All of them hit by a pitch. And from the Blue Jay point of view, Tim Johnson couldn't think of a better time for Carlos Delgado to snap an 0 for 26.
Now that was a pretty straight fastball. Delgado now has a feel for the velocity. See, that's what's been causing him problems. He has expanded his strike zone. He's chasing those borderline pitches, and that ball was a sinking fastball out of the strike zone. But in an effort to do some damage with the bases loaded, he chases a bad pitch. And that's what happens when you're mired in a slump. You find yourself swinging at too many pitcher pitches.
Had a hit in his first at bat since the All-Star break and hasn't had one since. And it's in the air to center. Chased another pitch out of the strike zone. In to make the catch is Mike Cameron, who has come into the game in center field for defensive purposes, and Howery gets out of it. Delgado 0 for his last 27, and the Blue Jays leave the bases loaded. These two little guys are having some fun tonight as the White Sox lead the Blue Jays by a score of 4-2 heading to the bottom of the 7th. And the night has come to an end for Blue Jays starter Dave Stieb. The best he can hope for in terms of a decision is a no decision. Blue Jays had a good chance to get the lead back with him still the pitcher of record, but as it is, he leaves perhaps with a loss. Here's his line.
6 innings, 7 hits, and 4 runs, and both 2-run home runs, first by Albert Bell in the first, and then in the 5th inning, shortstop Mike Caruso hit his 4th home run of the season. Stieb struck out only 1 batter. That was Chad Kruder back in the 5th inning. And he'll give way to Robert Person. Person pitched 2 innings last night in Baltimore and pitched very effective in his first inning of work. He had a 1-2-3 inning in the 6th in relief of Woody Williams. But then he ran into a buzzsaw in the 7th. He was touched up for 3 runs on 4 hits, including 3 home runs. Rafael Palmeiro, B.J. Surhoff, and Joe Carter all hit solo home runs off Robert last night.
Bill Risley pitched in game 1. Person and Quantrill each pitched last night, so Plesac and Myers are rested. Tim Johnson hopes for a key situation, but first the Blue Jays have to either tie it up or take the lead before he'll likely use them. There's a rip into right center. First pitch, Chad Kruder on his way to second and in there with a leadoff double.
Chad Kruder's done a pretty good job of calling pitches and shutting down the Blue Jays tonight. And here he gets his first hit on a first pitch fastball. He hits it into center field. Sean Green cuts it off and flips it back to the infield, but it's a leadoff double for the catcher.
And a chance for the White Sox to add to their lead with a guy who can handle the bat. Ray Durham beat out a bunt for a base hit last time. He's a very good bunter. Sprague's inside the bag at third. And Delgado even with the bag at first. Doesn't show bunt, takes a strike. Durham was the White Sox All-Star representative. Just got in there for 1 inning in the All-Star game. Roberto Alomar played the first 8 at second base for the American League and was the All-Star game MVP. If Albert Bell gets hot 1 week earlier, he probably goes to the game, and a lot of people try to make something out of Hargrove, his ex-manager, not taking Bell to the game.
Well, there was a lot of guys that didn't get an opportunity to go to the All-Star game, and you know, you can't make everybody happy.
Gonna try to bunt again, and this time he pops it up, and Person cradles it in foul territory for the first out.
Ray Durham didn't do a very good job of squaring up on this bunt attempt. He kind of jabbed at the ball, and when he did that, he popped it into the air. See how he jabs at it right there, just feeling for it, and there it is, popped in the air. Delisandro didn't see it immediately off the bat, but Robert Person comes off the mound and makes a good play.
Durham now 2 for 4, retired for the first out of the inning. And it'll be Mike Caruso, who's had a big night with a double and a homer. His home run right now, the difference in this ball game.
Well, you talk about a great spot in the lineup to hit for a young player. How about this spot? Ahead of Frank Thomas and Albert Bell. You think he's going to get a couple of fastballs in this at bat. He's just got to be patient enough to wait for a good one. Here he is, a 21-year-old rookie hitting in front of maybe the best hitter in baseball.
And hitting .318 as a result. 2 outs, nobody on in the 5th. Then Durham bunts himself aboard. And then Caruso breaks the tie against Stieb.
Now, Stieb may have been thinking about Durham taking off because he throws a high fastball to Mike Caruso, and he hits it over the 375 mark in right center. His 4th home run of the season.
1 ball, 1 strike the count here. Kruder at second, 1 down. And he's going to try to bunt his way on. Delgado's got it, so Caruso's out with 2 down. Kruder's down to 3rd as we go back to Gino at baseball tonight.
Well, Dan, the Baltimore Orioles on a 6-game winning streak, but they've lost 10 straight on the road. They're on the road tonight in Arlington, up 6-3. Rafael Palmeiro, his 15th career home run versus the Rangers, is 28th this season. It is now 7-3 for the Orioles.
Maybe a look out for the Orioles. They're looking for their 7th win in a row.
Well, the way they were swinging the bats against Toronto, and even before that, Rafael Palmeiro was hot. B.J. Surhoff was 11 for 12 at one point against Toronto. Actually, he got hits in the previous game before Toronto got there for their short 2-game series.
The batter is Frank Thomas. 2 outs, runner at 3rd. 4-2 Chicago in the 7th. Robert Person trying to hold him right there. It'll be Fletcher, Sprague, and D'Alessandro for the Blue Jays in the 8th. 2-0. Person falls behind. A lot up in the air for the Blue Jays these days. Swing and a miss, 2-1. Are they in it? Are they out of it? Gordash is in Chicago and watching the Blue Jays with some guys at AAA pushing for a chance to get back up to the majors. Boy, how Frank Thomas can complain about the strike zone.
He stands so far off the plate, and he's so big, he still has great coverage on the outside part of the plate, but very rarely will an umpire call an inside strike on him.
How would you pitch him if you're behind the plate? What would you tell your pitcher to do?
You got to try to pitch him inside. You have to try to crowd him a bit because he loves to extend and get the ball out over the plate. He is in the deepest reaches of the batter's box, both off the plate and back of the plate. So he is going after everything out over the plate. And that's where you got to pitch him. You got to crowd him inside.
Delgado should have a play. And he does. Thomas is retired and the White Sox are done. Leadoff double given up by Person, but a good job to get out of it. And Chicago still leads by 2 with the Blue Jays coming up in the 8th. This telecast is presented by authority of the Toronto Blue Jays Baseball Club, and it may not be reproduced or retransmitted without the consent of the Toronto Blue Jays. It's 4-2 White Sox, top of the 8th. A very good emergency start, if you will, in the doubleheader for Carlos Castillo, making only the 2nd start of the season and his 4th start of his career. He did a very good job.
He sure did. He stayed ahead most of the night, and he was able to shut down the Blue Jays. They got to him for a single run in the 1st and another single run in the 3rd, but that was it. He scattered 7 hits over his 6 innings of work. Didn't walk a batter, and that was key when Jerry Manuel was trying to decide who to start in this 2nd game of this doubleheader. The fact that Carlos Castillo throws a lot of strikes.
Tim Johnson at his wits' end with this ball club that went into the All-Star break among the hottest in baseball, having won 11 of 14. If they lose tonight, they are 1-7 out of the break, having lost 3 of 4 in Detroit, swept by the Orioles in 2 in Baltimore, lost the 1st game here tonight, and losing again in the 2nd game. Fletcher, Sprague, and D'Alessandro in the 8th. One ball, 1 strike. Bobby Howry, the pitcher, and a check swing foul, 1-2.
Well, you can see why the White Sox are excited about Howry. He's got a good arm. He's got a good fastball. He can throw the four-seam fastball top of the strike zone. He can sink the ball in the bottom part of the strike zone. And we've seen a pretty good slider. Coming up.
Fletcher hits a high drive to right. Ordonez still going back. One down. Let's get another update from Gino.
Well, it is now a final, and there was plenty of offense. Pro Player Stadium, Marlins hosting the Montreal Expos. Carlos Perez trying to snap a personal 6-game losing streak. He gets the victory. He got plenty of run support. 9-5 victory over Florida.
And again, the Expos and Pirates tomorrow night, 7 Eastern here on TSN. Here the White Sox, Gino leading the Blue Jays 4-2. Ed Sprague the batter. One out in the top of the 8th. Sprague's 1 for 3. It's not as if it gets easier for the Blue Jays. If anything, it gets tougher with the Yankees in on the weekend and then the Blue Jays in Boston for 4 next weekend.
And then they've got the Texas Rangers, who are battling for their life right now. Rangers and the Angels go back and forth.
Ventura. 2 down.
That AL West division may be very interesting before it's all said and done this year. The Oakland Athletics have really made a charge. They are 4 games under 500. They have won 3 straight and 7 of their last 10. I mean, they got a chance to get right in the middle of it. Kenny Rogers won yesterday. He is 9-3.
Matt Stairs has 61 RBIs now.
Well, what a great year he's having. And then the rookie all-star Ben Grieve. They seemed to take off when they brought up the shortstop Miguel Tejada. And he has played so well for them defensively. He's given the pitching staff a big boost.
Two 2-0 the count on D'Alessandro for 3 on the night. Harry's had a good effort here tonight. The A's went out and got Bip Roberts, who was unwanted in Detroit, and Bip's played very well for Oakland. He is playing second and hitting second, and for one of the rare occasions he's staying healthy and contributing a lot.
Roberts has hit in all 13 games that he's played in since going to Oakland. And they have just now gotten back Jason McDonald, who had that awful collision with Ricky Henderson in the outfield. He's their center fielder. Bill Taylor, who was with the Blue Jays for a while a couple of years ago, is closing now, and he has 20 saves. Tom Candiotti, another former Blue Jay, starting for Oakland.
I love it when you get a hold of a team. It's your new club. You've been talking about them nonstop for 2 days.
You know, I just really love what they have done with that small market economy.
If only they hadn't messed up the ballpark.
Yeah,
for the
they
sake
really
of
messed up the ballpark.
Yeah. Two down, nobody on, and a full count on D'Alessandro. Bobby Howry on the mound for the White Sox. 4-2 Chicago. Jammed and a little pop-up for Ventura that will end the inning. Very good job by Bobby Howry. D'Alessandro for 4 in front of the hometown folks, but he has thrown out a couple of runners. But bigger problem for the Blue Jays. They're running out of time, down a couple. Coverage of the British Open begins tomorrow morning here on TSN. It continues right through the weekend. Tomorrow and Friday, it'll begin at 9 in the morning Eastern time, 6 in the morning Pacific time. And a look at a couple of the big groups that you'll want to keep an eye on. Tomorrow morning, you'll get just the very tail end of Tiger Woods' run, and then a whole lot of Tiger on Friday. Tomorrow is a good day to look in on Justin Leonard.
Well, that is a pretty interesting British Open at Royal Birkdale. South African Gary Player will start in his 44th straight British Open, and he has won 3 times. Obviously, he's not in contention to win, but it's a tremendous streak for a player who played in his first British Open in 1955 when he was 19 years old.
Huh. Here's Albert Bell. Home run in game 1, a home run in game 2. Also a base hit here in game 2. Scattered a few teammates in that dugout. Albert has gone back to being uncooperative with the media, which led some of the media to wonder when that change occurred exactly, because it wasn't readily apparent to them. But
when he was cooperative?
Yes. He has told Ron Schuler, who has told the public, that Albert has said that when things are going well, he'll be happy, then he'll talk, then the fans will like him. When the team is not doing well, he's not happy, he doesn't want to talk. But he's hitting. He is hitting everything he gets to. Another extra base hit. Albert Bell has singled, doubled, and homered here in this game.
And that'll push him right to the brink of 300. I mean, he is red hot. And everything he hits, he's hitting right on the nose, too. They tried to get this ball in. They leave it out over the plate a little bit, and it's down around the knees. But he hammers it off the fence in center field.
He is 5 for 9 in the doubleheader, and now 19 for his last 37. And Tim Johnson is going to the pen with Robin Ventura, the scheduled hitter. American League Player of the Week last week, and maybe well on his way to American League Player of the Month here in July. Having a monstrous July. Person gave up a double, but nothing more last inning, and now gives up another leadoff double here in the 8th. And it'll be Dan Plesac to try and keep the Blue Jays within 2 here in the bottom of the 8th. We'll step aside as Plesac warms up. Come on back to Comiskey and join us in just a moment. On to face Robin Ventura with Albert Bell at second and nobody out here in the bottom of the 8th. White Sox already leading 4-2. Albert Bell has done most of the damage. 5 for 9 in the doubleheader with a couple of homers. Now hitting an even 300 on the season, but don't discount what Durham and Caruso did up at the top of the order.
Well, they really set the table for the big guys in the lineup, and they were a distraction to be sure. But Albert Bell has had some night here, 5 for 9 in the doubleheader. And his batting average for the season is up to 300.
Time to get out of town if you're opposing pitchers. When he was on those tremendous runs in 1995, he'd have a week or two where he'd cool off, and then the news would get out in a hurry. Albert's hot. And he's as hot as anybody right now in a small but pretty enthusiastic crowd of 15,000 and change here. Hoping their White Sox can sweep the doubleheader. If they do, they'll have won 6 out of 7. And while they're not going anywhere this season, any goodwill between the White Sox and the community is a step in the right direction, because it's been an awful year for them. Ventura, high fly ball right field. Drifting back Canseco, and he makes the catch. Bell easily tags and comes to third.
Robin Ventura was guessing right along with Dan Plesac there, looking for a first pitch fastball, and just got underneath it. He had a pretty good swing at it. They're trying to get the ball in, and you see how it works its way out over the plate. Ventura had a good swing at it, just got underneath it a bit. Now Blue Jays can ill afford to fall any further behind the White Sox here. Jerry Manuel's club is up by 2, bottom of the 8th inning. And Kim Johnson has called for ball control.
It's been Dan Plesac's season. 1 batter, 1 pitch, 1 out. And now he's going to lead. Right-hand hitting Maglio Ordonez is the next scheduled hitter.
There's Quantrill, who will jog in from the right field bullpen.
He'll become the 4th pitcher of the night. Dave Stieb, the starter, went 6th. Then a Robert Person, then Plesac just for 1 pitch. And now Quantrill with a runner at third and 1 down. If you missed it earlier, here is what Dave Stieb did. He gave up a 2-out, 2-run homer to Albert Bell in the 1st, and a 2-out, 2-run homer to Mike Caruso in the 5th. And what was most reminiscent of the Dave Stieb of old was his demeanor on the mound. He was snorting around and angry at himself and a lot of emotion. And who knows how he views his performance, but he pitched fairly well.
Yeah, I think he pitched fairly well, but I don't think he is here to have a pat on the back and say, hey, you threw pretty well. I think he's here to win games and make an impression that he can be effective in the big leagues.
4-2 Chicago, runner at third, one down. Quantrill on the mound for the Blue Jays when we return.
Need a pair for the Yankees, July 17th, 18th, and 19th. Give us a call.
Paul Quantrill, the fourth pitcher of the night for the Blue Jays. White Sox leading 4-2 in the bottom of the 8th inning. And the Blue Jays will pull the infield in. With Albert Bell at third base and only one out, they can ill afford to give up another run, Buck.
Well, they don't want to fall any farther behind. This will be the 46th appearance for Quantrill. You can see his hit total starting to exceed his innings pitched. His right-handed hitters have really been sitting on that outside fastball. Or that went too far outside for Ordonez.
Maglio Ordonez 0 for 3 on the night. He's pretty much become the everyday right fielder for the White Sox. Took part in that all-star hitting contest out of the All-Star game. Celebrities, old-timers, and rookies. Now the rookie drives it plenty deep enough to left field to score Albert Bell. Good execution by the White Sox. Leadoff double. A couple of fly balls to bring the run in.
Paul Quantrill was looking for a ground ball on the infield in an effort to keep Albert Bell at third base, but Bell is greeted by a whole host of teammates as he has worn out the Blue Jays tonight. This ball was headed inside, but Ordonez is quick enough to put up a good swing on it and drive it to left field for the sacrifice fly.
And it is 5-2 for Chicago. Greg Norton, the first baseman, 0 for 3.
That last run will be charged to Robert Person as he gave up the double to Albert Bell to start this inning.
And although the line for both Plesac and presumably Quantrill, if he can get out of it, it's going to look like a spotless line, and both of them feel worse giving up another pitcher's run than they do their own. And each of them allowed the runner to move up a base. Huge night for Albert Bell. 5 hits, including a couple of homers here in the doubleheader. And on pace right now to drive in between 140 and 150 runs on the season.
And the remarkable aspect of that is that Frank Thomas isn't having his typical year. He's hitting just over 275, and he's not been on base as much as he normally is. Bell's numbers might be up around 100 in RBIs.
Granted to first, Delgado, Quantrill inning over. But another run scores, and the Albert Bell double is the key hit. It is 5-2 Chicago. The Blue Jays have only 3 outs left. In Chicago, the White Sox lead the Blue Jays 5-2, heading to the top of the 9th inning. Crowd of 15,602 has thinned out a little bit here toward the end of the second game of the doubleheader. The Blue Jays have not done much offensively again here tonight. Jose Canseco has driven in 2 runs. In the doubleheader, Buck, the Blue Jays are 2 for 17 with runners in scoring position, and it's those 2 hits right there.
Yeah, they just couldn't come up with a key hit. Canseco double and a single, but no one else was able to break through against the White Sox here tonight.
Graybeck, Gonzalez, and Stewart, 8, 9, and 1. Due up for the Blue Jays here in the 9th. Tony Fernandez, Mike Stanley, Felipe Crespo, all on the Blue Jay bench. Crespo had a couple of hits in game 1. Blue Jays down by 3. New pitcher for the White Sox is Bill Seamus, who has taken over as the occasional closer for Chicago. Matt Karchner was on the DL in Blue Saves Sunday and again last night.
Well, you can see by the quality of Seamus' pitches that he's another hard thrower. Bobby Howard came out of that bullpen and pitched an inning and 2/3 very effectively.
Way back, you turncoat!
Nice play by Ventura.
Well, that's what Gold Glovers do for you. You give up a hot shot, and Robin Ventura takes it on the short hop and makes an easy play of it. Seamus gave Graybeck a pretty good pitch to hit, and Craig hits it on the button, but look at Ventura. He scoops the short hop and makes the easy toss to first.
Alex Gonzalez will hit. One for 3 here tonight with a base hit his first time up. Ground out and a fly ball as well. Day game tomorrow, Chris Carpenter, James Baldwin. Then the Yankees in town over the weekend. Our next telecast for you is going to be Tuesday night at SkyDome when these White Sox are in. We'll show you them Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we'll bring you the first game of the Blue Jays series at Fenway Park a week from tomorrow night. The 1-1. Fouled off.
But I have to admit to you, Dan, that I never expected to see the Blue Jays go 1-7 on this road trip. I just didn't think that they were going to turn around so dramatically, given the way they were playing going into the break. And I can think back to that first inning in Detroit when they came out smoking, got 4 consecutive hits, but it's been slim pickings since then.
And a lifeless bunch right now.
I think it's caught everybody by surprise. I think they expected everything to just pick up where they left off. They couldn't break through against the Tigers. In the first 3 games, Blue Jays could score only 2 runs in each of those 3 games. They lost all 3 of those games. Only a Roger Clemens start on the Sunday of the 4-game series salvaged the 1 game. But that pretty much sums it up for the Blue Jays right there.
In the 8 games since the break, they've scored 23 runs, less than 3 runs per game. And while Tony Phillips is going to arrive in Toronto very soon and probably will inject a bit of a spark, it's not the difference between winning and losing. He's not the difference between a contender and a non-contender.
No, not at all. And it'll probably take him a while to really get comfortable.
Through the right side, Gonzalez is 2 for 4. And the Blue Jays have a base runner with 1 out here in the 9th.
It's not like Tony Phillips can join this team and become a leader immediately. He's in a new organization. He's in a locker room with players he's not familiar with, and he'll have to earn his respect on the field.
Top of the order, Shannon Stewart's been on a couple times tonight. 5-2 Chicago, 1 out of the 9th. Bill Seamus trying to save it for Carlos Castillo. If it holds up, Dave Stieb will take the loss in what will be his first decision since 1993. The 0-1. 0-2. On deck Green, and then behind him Canseco. So if either Stewart or Green could reach, Canseco could come up representing the game's tying run. You can have a crowd sitting on its hands and one guy boots a ball in the stands and they're all over him.
He gets an opportunity for a souvenir and then drops it.
Seamus ahead 0-2. Comes right at him.
Well, this is the guy you have to come right at because he only represents the 4th run. And you have to challenge him to put it in play. Sean Green on deck represents the tying run, so Shannon Stewart really doesn't mean a lot.
Gonzalez at first, one down.
See, that's what I think sometimes players forget, to look at the scoreboard and evaluate who's at the plate. Pitch around Stewart, you worry about getting him out, and before you know it, you've walked him, and you set the table for a 3-run home run that would tie the game.
Got it. 2 down.
Seamus throws a good breaking ball to Shannon Stewart, and with 2 strikes, he can't make contact. So it's up to Sean Green to keep the inning alive.
Chicago winning the first game 9-3. Pat Henkin gave up all 9 runs to take the loss. Jamie Navarro the winner. And now here in game 2, Carlos Castillo pitching pretty well. Dave Stieb giving up 4 runs through 6 innings. White Sox added a 5th run in the bottom of the 8th. And with 2 down in the 9th, it's up to Green to try to keep it alive. Gonzalez is going. They'll concede the base. And Green goes around, so it's 1-2. No steal credited to Gonzalez on the play. Defensive indifference. Now the crowd's starting to rise to its feet with the Blue Jays down to their final strike.
Here's another situation for Seamus wanting to come right after Sean Green. 2-2 count. You don't want to see it go 3-2. Missed with a changeup. Canseco's already been productive. Gary Manuel would just as soon not see Jose Canseco come to the plate.
Ball 4. Close pitch. And now Canseco will come to the plate, and he can tie it with a home run.
Sean Green works Seamus for the walk. I really question the 2-2 pitch. I don't know what he was doing throwing a changeup 2-2. To me, you've got to challenge Green to hit it 9 miles. You just don't want to bring Canseco to the plate.
But he's there with the runners at first and second. Blue Jays trailing 5-2. Both of the RBIs belong to Canseco. Also been hit by a pitch and has struck out on the night. Grounded to short. And that'll do it. The White Sox sweep a doubleheader from the Blue Jays, who dropped to 1-7 since the break, dropped 2 games below 500, and most significantly, dropped 9 games back at the Boston Red Sox in the wild card race. Fireworks all the way around, and a lot of them generated by Albert Bell here, Buck, with 5 hits, a couple of homers in the doubleheader.
Well, he continues to swing a hot bat. He has been the hottest hitter in the American League, to be sure, in the month of July, and he's on his way to another Player of the Week award in the American League.
And the player of the game for the Blue Jays in tonight's game on behalf of Nikon, despite the final out, is Jose Canseco, who's the only guy who did anything offensively with a single and a double. And he drove in both Blue Jay runs on the night. But the team story is not a pretty one for Toronto. They lose again. White Sox sweep the doubleheader. Final score 5-2. Dave Stieb takes the loss. This was a tight game through the middle innings. We take you back to the bottom of the 5th. Dave Stieb getting his first start as a Toronto Blue Jay this time around. 2 outs, 1 on, and Mike Caruso. It's his 4th home run of the season, a 2-run shot over the right field wall to give the White Sox a 4-2 lead. They would add a run in the 8th and eventually beat the Blue Jays by a score of 5-2 as they sweep the doubleheader from Toronto and drop the Blue Jays 9 games back of the Red Sox. A cash donation will be made to the Coaching Association for the training and development of Canadian coaches in amateur sport on behalf of TSN. Albert Bell, the hot hitter of the night, both games for the White Sox, a home run in each game. He's got 9 homers in his last 8 games. Carlos Castillo, the winner, and Bill Seamus came on to lock it up in the 9th inning with his 7th save of the season. Chicago winning game 1, 9-3. Game 2, much more competitive. They beat Toronto, though, by a score of 5-2. And the big story heading into game 2, obviously, especially from the point of view of Blue Jays fans, was the start of Dave Stieb. This was his first start in the major leagues in more than 5 years, and Dave Stieb is about ready to join us from field level here at Comiskey Park. Of course, his last start was at Comiskey as a member of the White Sox back in '93. Dave, thank you for joining us. And just to get it started, how would you assess your performance tonight?
Well, I'm not real pleased about the couple pitches I made for home runs, but overall, it was a battle out there. That's all I can say. It was a battle.
How did your stamina hold up, Dave? It looked like you were able to carry your stuff late into the ball game.
Yeah, I felt fine. I threw a lot more pitches than I would like to have. Had too many deep counts, but it was tough out there. You know, it was just tough.
What about Albert Bell? I mean, you see how hot he is right there, and the pitch you made to him, obviously you didn't get it where you wanted to. Where would you want that pitch if you had it back again?
Well, that pitch has got to be outside. I left it right down the middle of the plate for him, and you know, that's just a bad situation to do that in first inning like that after getting a run, having a lead right away to make a bad pitch like that with 2 strikes. I've got to at least waste that 2 feet outside. I can't leave that pitch right there.
What about the home run to the shortstop Caruso? Was Ray Durham in your mind at all about the possibility he was going to steal right there?
No, not at all. I just didn't get that pitch away like I wanted to. You know, it was supposed to be down and away, and I guess I overthrew it a little bit and left it up and over the plate, and I was surprised it went out, actually.
Well, we've talked about the homers. What about the positive things, Dave? 6 innings. What can you take out of this start that you can use for your next outing?
Well, just the fact that, you know, I threw a lot of strikes. My pitches looked pretty sharp. I felt pretty good about, you know, the pitches I threw. It was a tough zone.
Have you been given any kind of an indication from Tim Johnson what's next, what your role now is with this team?
No, I know nothing.
So could be back to the bullpen. You're in the dark right now.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you very much, and we appreciate your time tonight.
Okay.
Dave Stieb of the Toronto Blue Jays, 6 innings, gave up 4 runs, and takes the loss here tonight in Chicago as the White Sox beat the Blue Jays 5-2 to sweep the doubleheader.
Labatt Blue Jays Baseball on TSN. Brought to you by Labatt Blue, out of the blue. And by Gatorade. Is it in you?
Welcome back to Baseball Tonight, everyone. I'm Gino Red along with Pat Tabler. Well, the Blue Jays get swept. The big story, obviously, in game number 2, the return of Dave Stieb to the starter's position with the Jays. Stieb goes 6, gives up 4 runs. Your thoughts on his outing?
Stieb pitched a really nice game. You know, if you condense it down, he only made 2 bad pitches. One to the hottest hitter on the planet, Albert Bell, and he's not going to miss that pitch. And the one that really hurt was the home run to Caruso. You didn't figure he'd hit the home run. So I thought Dave pitched a great game, made 2 mistakes, and gave up the 4 runs.
And I'll tell you what, Pat, he has a lot of fire in him. You can tell he's not happy about that loss. Our next broadcast here on TSN features the controversial Chris Widger and the Expos facing the Pirates tomorrow night. Coming up next on Sports Desk, the Toronto Maple Leafs sign Cujo, a Week 3 preview of the CFL and a British Open preview. The story on this night, Albert Bell, home runs in both games in a doubleheader against the Blue Jays. The White Sox sweep the Blue Jays. For everyone here at Baseball Tonight, I'm Gino Reda. Stick around for Sports Desk next.
But as Steve is well aware, starting a ball game is a very different kettle of fish. Let's see how the guy would do. There he is, the all-time Blue Jay leader in wins, complete games, shutouts, innings pitched, games started. He's done it all this season. Steve with that 1.69 ERA in 4 games, all in relief. First inning, the Jays up 1-0. Ray Durham, the leadoff batter. Oh, there goes the no-no for David Stieb. Still in the first, the Sox with 1 on and 2 out. Albert Bell, it's kind of scary. He's got 8 home runs since the All-Star game. This is why, man, that's a confident swing right there. Ding-dong for Bell. That's It's his 27th home run of the year, and it was 2-1 Chicago. Fifth inning, 2-all. Stieb still out there battling. He's only given up 4 hits. With 2 down, though, Ray Durham lays down the drag bunt. Oh, what a drag this one is. He's in no man's land out there. He is safe at first as he speeds down the line. The next hitter is Mike Caruso. Holy Caruso! He does some damage to the tune of deep to right. It's another home run. This time it's a 2-run shot, his 4th of the year, and it was 4-2 for the White Sox. Gord Ash taking it all in, taking a few notes, as well as the scouts and the Yankees and the Marlins there in the building as well. 7th inning, 4-2 Chicago. 2 on for Jose Canseco. He's got a couple of ribs tonight, so nail him. And that would load the bases. The 3rd batter of the inning, hit by pitch. So the bases are juiced for this man, Carlos Delgado, but he's in the midst of an 0 for 26 slump, so he's not going to do much damage. Pops up shallow center. Not in the cards tonight for David Stieb. He's still a competitor. You know that. He shakes his head there. 5-2 Chicago wins this thing. Stieb throwing 105 pitches, only walked a couple of batters over his 6 innings of work, but it was the home runs that killed him, and after the game, that's exactly what David Stieb was talking about.
Well, I'm not real pleased about the couple pitches I made for home runs, but overall, it was a battle out there. That's all I can say. It was a battle. I left it right down the middle of the plate for him, and that's just a bad situation to do that in first inning like that after getting a run, having a lead right away to make a bad pitch like that with 2 strikes. I've got to at least waste that 2 feet outside. I can't leave that pitch right there.